Welcome back to the Haunted Fears horror family. Picture yourself on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, miles from shore, when you realize something is horribly wrong. The person you spoke to during the safety drill disappeared from this ship 3 weeks ago. Your cabin door opens by itself every night at the same time. Someone is swimming alongside the ship in the dark water, keeping perfect pace. Tonight, you'll hear 11 accounts that will change how you see the ocean forever. Drop a comment if you've ever experienced something strange on a cruise. And don't forget to like this video to help us reach more members of the Haunted Fears horror family. Now, let's dive into these disturbing experiences. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now because you don't want to miss what we have coming for you. I never should have left the casino that night, but when you've had too many complimentary drinks and your bladder is screaming, you don't always make the smartest decisions. It was day 3 of our 7-day Royal Caribbean cruise through the Caribbean, and I'd been on a decent winning streak at the blackjack tables. My name is Kara, and I'm usually the responsible one in my friend group. The designated driver, the one who reads all the fine print, the one who double-checks that the stove is off before leaving the house. But something about being on a cruise ship makes you feel invincible, like the normal rules don't apply when you're floating in the middle of the ocean. Around 2:30 in the morning, I excused myself from the table to find a restroom. The main bathroom near the casino had a line of about 8 people, mostly drunk passengers like myself, giggling and swaying in their formal wear from the evening's events. I didn't want to wait. I'd seen other bathrooms throughout the ship during our muster drill, so I figured I'd just find another one. I took the elevator down 2 decks and started walking. The carpeted hallways, with their ornate decorations and soft lighting, gradually gave way to something more utilitarian. I should have turned back then, but I was convinced there had to be another restroom just around the next corner. The carpet ended, replaced by industrial linoleum. The warm lighting was gone, replaced by harsh fluorescent tubes that hummed overhead and cast everything in a sickly yellow-green glow. That's when I saw the door marked Crew Only. In my intoxicated state, my logic was simple. Crew members are people. People need bathrooms. Therefore, there must be a bathroom beyond this door. I pushed through it, and the change was immediate and unsettling. Gone was any pretense of luxury or comfort. I found myself in a narrow corridor with metal walls, exposed pipes running along the ceiling, and that persistent fluorescent hum that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. The hallway stretched ahead of me, completely empty. Doors lined both sides, each one identical, painted that institutional beige-gray color you see in maintenance areas and school basements. Small signs with codes like M47 and E12 were the only distinguishing features. I walked forward, my heels clicking loudly against the metal floor, the sound echoing in a way that made me acutely aware of how alone I was. I must have walked for 3 or 4 minutes, taking turns whenever the corridor branched, following what I thought was an internal compass, pointing me toward some bathroom or back to the passenger areas. But every turn just led to more corridors, more doors, more of that oppressive fluorescent lighting. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not my own breathing, though that had gotten heavier from a combination of alcohol and growing anxiety. This was different. It was slow, deliberate, and it was coming from somewhere behind me. I froze, listening intently. For a moment, there was nothing but the hum of the lights and the distant thrum of the ship's engines. Then I heard it again, closer now. A wet, raspy sound, like someone with fluid in their lungs trying to draw air. I spun around, my heart hammering. The corridor behind me was empty, but as I stood there, staring at the empty hallway, I watched as wet footprints began to appear on the floor. Not all at once, but one after another, as if an invisible person was walking toward me, leaving a trail of water with each step. The footprints were coming from around the corner I'd just turned. They were oddly shaped, not quite like normal footprints. Too long, with strange gaps where toes should be. But what terrified me most was that they were heading directly toward where I stood, appearing one after another in a steady rhythm that matched that horrible breathing sound. I ran. I didn't care which direction, I just ran, my heels pounding against the metal floor, my breath coming in panicked gasps. I could hear the wet footsteps behind me, moving faster now, matching my pace. The breathing grew louder, more insistent. I yanked off my heels and ran faster in my bare feet, the cold metal floor sending shocks of cold up my legs. I turned corner after corner, completely disoriented now. The corridors all looked exactly the same. I tried several doors, but they were locked, requiring key cards I didn't have. The footsteps behind me never faltered, never fell behind. Whatever was following me was keeping perfect pace, as if it knew exactly where I would turn next. Then I saw it. Up ahead, maybe 30 feet away, the corridor ended in a door marked Deck 7 Access. A passenger area. Safety. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning, my lungs screaming. I could hear the breathing right behind me now, so close I could feel cold air on the back of my neck. I hit the door at full speed, slamming into it with my shoulder. It didn't budge. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. I pushed. Still nothing. I looked back over my shoulder. The wet footprints had stopped about 5 feet behind me. As I watched, frozen in terror, more water began to pool on the floor, not in footprints now, but in a larger, irregular shape, as if something was standing there, dripping. The breathing had stopped. Everything had gone silent except for that eternal fluorescent hum. Then the water on the floor began to ripple, disturbed by something I couldn't see. The puddle was spreading, moving toward me. I pounded on the door, screaming for help, not caring how crazy I sounded. The water reached my feet, and it was freezing cold, far colder than it should have been. I tried the door again, pulling with every ounce of strength I had left. This time, miraculously, it opened. I burst through into a carpeted hallway, blessed warm lighting washing over me. I slammed the door behind me and stood there, gasping, shaking, my feet leaving wet prints on the carpet. I was on Deck 7, in a section recognized. Passenger cabins lined the walls, ordinary and safe and normal. I looked down at my feet. They were wet, but with what looked like regular water. I looked back at the door I'd come through. It was marked crew only, no passenger access. I didn't go back to the casino. I went straight to my cabin, locked the door, and sat in the shower with hot water running over me until the sun came up. I told myself it was the alcohol, that I'd gotten disoriented and panicked, that there was a rational explanation for everything. But the next morning when I went to breakfast, I overheard 2 crew members talking in hushed voices. One of them mentioned how the maintenance corridors had been flooding on and off all night, water appearing in sections where there were no pipes, no leaks, nothing that should have caused it. They'd checked the security footage, but the cameras in that area had malfunctioned, showing nothing but static. I thought about telling them what I'd experienced, but what would I say? That I'd been chased by invisible wet footprints. That something had been breathing behind me in an empty corridor. They'd think I was insane. On the 4th day of the cruise, I forced myself to walk past that crew-only door on Deck 7. I told myself I needed to see it in daylight, needed to prove to myself that it was just a normal door. As I approached, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, on the floor right in front of the door, were water stains. Old water stains, the kind that come from repeated exposure, as if something wet had stood in that exact spot many, many times. And in the pattern of those stains, if you looked at them the right way, you could almost make out the shape of those same elongated, irregular footprints. I didn't tell anyone about what happened that night. Not my friends, not the crew, not even my family when I got home. But I did some research when I got back. I spent hours online, diving deep into cruise ship forums and maritime history sites. I found a story, buried in an old maritime accident report from 7 years ago. A maintenance worker on that same ship had gone missing during a routine shift. They found his keycard access log showed he'd been in the lower maintenance corridors, the same area where I'd gotten lost. But they never found his body. The report mentioned that he'd drowned on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, in an area with no water deep enough to drown in. The official conclusion was that he'd somehow made his way to an exterior deck and fallen overboard, but his body was never recovered, and the timeline didn't make sense. Several crew members had reported hearing strange sounds in the maintenance corridors after his disappearance: wet footsteps, breathing, the sound of someone moving through water where there was no water. Eventually, the report stopped, or at least stopped being officially filed. The crew learned not to talk about it. I found one more thing that made me wish I'd never gone looking: a grainy security camera image from the night that maintenance worker disappeared. It showed him in one of those corridors, looking back over his shoulder at something. The image quality was poor, but you could see the expression on his face: pure terror. And there, on the floor behind him, just barely visible in the frame, were wet footprints, leading away from him, as if something had walked past him, coming from somewhere deeper in the ship, somewhere no one goes, somewhere no one should go. I've never been on a cruise since that night. When friends suggest it, I make excuses. Too expensive. Too crowded. I get seasick. Anything but the truth. Because the truth is, sometimes late at night when I'm alone in my apartment, I hear that sound. That wet, raspy breathing. And I look down at my floor and half expect to see those footprints appearing again, one after another walking toward me. I check my locks 3 times before bed now, and I never ever open any door marked staff only, or employees only, or restricted access. Whatever is behind those doors, whatever walks those hidden corridors, I don't want to meet it again. The maintenance worker's name was Harold Chen. He was 43 years old when he disappeared. He had a wife and 2 kids. I found his memorial page online. His daughter had written, "Dad always said he felt like something was following him on the ship." We thought he was joking. He wasn't joking. And now I know why I felt that presence keeping perfect pace behind me. Why it stopped exactly when I reached the door. Why it let me go. It wasn't chasing me. It was following me. The same way it followed Harold. The same way it's probably followed others. I was just lucky enough to find a door that opened. Harold wasn't. Sometimes I wonder if he's still down there, in those endless corridors beneath the passenger decks, walking those same routes he walked when he was alive, looking for a way out, looking for someone to see him, to acknowledge what happened to him. Or maybe, and this is the thought that keeps me awake at night, maybe whatever was making those wet footprints isn't Harold at all. Maybe it's whatever he encountered down there in the dark, whatever he found, or whatever found him. Either way, I'll never know, and I'll never go looking. Some doors should stay closed, some corridors should stay empty, and some things that breathe in the dark should never be acknowledged. Because if you acknowledge them, they know you can sense them, and once they know that, they'll never stop following you. Not completely. They'll always be there, just out of sight, waiting for you to make another wrong turn, to open another wrong door, to find yourself alone in a place where no one will hear you scream. I learned that lesson in those maintenance corridors. I learned it from wet footprints that appeared from nowhere, and cold breath on my neck, in a door that opened only at the last possible second. I learned it, and I survived. But I know now that I was never supposed to be there. That area belongs to whatever walks those corridors. And I had trespassed. The question that haunts me isn't what was following me. It's why it let me leave. What made me different from Harold? Why did my door open when his didn't? I don't have answers. I just have memories of fluorescent lights and metal corridors, and breathing in the dark, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, on cruise ships sailing beautiful tropical waters, there are places where passengers don't go, hidden places, forgotten places, Places where things that shouldn't exist walk endless corridors, leaving wet footprints on metal floors, breathing with lungs that stopped working years ago, waiting for someone else to open the wrong door and step into their world. I opened that door. I stepped into that world. And even though I made it out, part of me never really left. Part of me is still there, running through those corridors, hearing those footsteps behind me, feeling that cold breath on my neck. That part of me will be there forever. Running. Always running. Never quite reaching safety. Just like Harold. My daughter stopped sleeping the first night we boarded. I should have listened to her then, but I thought it was just excitement about the vacation. My name is Dimitri, and I'm a single father. After my wife Ilani passed away 2 years ago from cancer, I'd been trying to keep things normal for our daughter Harmony, who was 6 at the time of this cruise. It was October 2023, and I'd saved up for months to take her on a Carnival cruise through the Gulf of Mexico. It was supposed to be about making happy memories, about showing Harmony that life could still be good even though her mom was gone. I thought a family vacation would help both of us heal. I was wrong. We boarded the Carnival Paradise in Tampa on a Saturday afternoon. The ship was beautiful, bright, colorful, everything you'd expect from a family cruise. Our cabin was on deck 4, number 4019. It was a sweet upgrade. I'd splurged because I wanted Harmony to have her own room connected to mine through an interior door. She deserved something special. The first thing Harmony did when we entered the cabin was stop in the doorway. She wouldn't go in. "Daddy, I don't like it here," she said, clutching her stuffed rabbit that she'd had since she was a baby. I thought she was just overwhelmed. The cabin was bigger than our apartment bedroom, with an ocean view, a small sitting area, and that connecting door to her room. "It's okay, sweetie," I told her. "Look, you have your own room, just like a big girl." I opened the connecting door to show her the second bedroom, with its twin beds and nautical decorations. She peeked in, then immediately pressed herself against my leg. "There's a woman in there," she whispered. I looked. The room was empty. "Harmony, there's nobody there. Come on, let's unpack and then we'll go get ice cream." I was using the same cheerful voice I'd been using for 2 years whenever she asked about her mother, whenever she cried at night, whenever the world felt too big and scary for a little girl who lost the most important person in her life. That voice that said everything would be okay, even when I didn't believe it myself. We went through the muster drill, explored the ship, had dinner. Harmony seemed to relax, but when bedtime came, she refused to sleep in her room. "The woman doesn't want me there," she insisted. I was exhausted from travel and from 2 years of single parenting, so I gave in. She could sleep in my room. We'd deal with it tomorrow, except there wasn't going to be a tomorrow where things got better. At 3:47 in the morning, I woke up to Harmony screaming. She was sitting up in bed, pointing at the connecting door, which was wide open. I knew I'd closed it. I knew I'd locked it. "She's standing there," Harmony sobbed. "She's looking at us." I turned on every light in the room. The doorway was empty. Her room beyond was dark and still. "Harmony, there's no one there. You had a bad dream." But she wouldn't stop crying. "She has long black hair, and she's wearing a white dress. And she's sad, Daddy. She's so sad." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat up with Harmony in my arms, watching that doorway, trying to convince myself that she'd had a nightmare brought on by grief and new surroundings. The second day, I tried to make everything normal. We went to the kids' club, the pool, the deck activities. I didn't mention the night before, but that evening, as we were getting ready for dinner, Harmony was playing in my room while I showered. When I came out, she was having a conversation with empty air. "My daddy can help you," she was saying. "He's really nice. He helped my mommy when she was sick." My blood ran cold. "Harmony, who are you talking to?" She turned to me with the serious expression she'd developed since Alani died, the expression that made her look far older than 8. "The woman from my room. Her name is Sarah. She says she can't find her family." That's when I started to feel it. A wrongness in the cabin. The air felt heavier on one side of the room, near that connecting door. The temperature dropped noticeably whenever I walked past it. I'm not a superstitious person. I'm an accountant. I believe in numbers, and facts, and logical explanations. But I couldn't explain the way my skin crawled every time I looked at that doorway. That night, I closed and locked the connecting door again. I even pushed a chair against it. At 3:47 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the door opening. The chair was on its side, the door was wide open, and Harmony was standing in the doorway, sleepwalking, reaching out toward something I couldn't see. "Mommy," she said, "is that you?" I grabbed her, pulled her back, slammed the door. This time I didn't just lock it. I called the front desk. "There's something wrong with our cabin," I said. "The door keeps opening by itself." The maintenance guy who showed up 20 minutes later was a crew member named Vance, maybe in his 50s, with kind eyes and a Filipino accent. He checked the lock, the door frame, everything. "Mechanically, it's fine," he said. Then he looked at the cabin number on the inside of the door. His expression changed. "Sir, has your daughter been seeing things?" I stared at him. "How did you know?" He glanced at Harmony, who was asleep on my bed, then back at me. "This cabin has a history. We don't usually book it for families with children." He told me that 3 years ago, a woman named Sarah Chen had died in cabin 4019. She'd been traveling with her husband and their 2 children when she'd had a brain aneurysm. She died instantly at 3:47 in the morning in the smaller bedroom, the one that was now Harmony's room. Her family had continued the cruise because they didn't know what else to do, but her husband said the cabin felt wrong afterward. He reported that their daughter kept seeing her mother standing by the bed. Security footage, Vance told me, showed something unusual. The cabin door had opened and closed by itself multiple times during the rest of that cruise, always at 3:47 a.m. "We thought it was a malfunction," Vance said quietly, "but it's happened on every cruise since then, only in this cabin, always at the same time." I asked him why they still rented the cabin if they knew it was haunted. He looked uncomfortable. "Officially, the cruise line doesn't believe in that kind of thing. Officially, it's just a coincidence." Then he met my eyes. "But if you want to change cabins, I can make that happen right now. No questions asked." Part of me wanted to move immediately, but part of me, the part that had watched Ilani die slowly over 18 months, felt something else. If there was a spirit in this cabin, it was a mother who couldn't leave her children, a woman who'd been ripped away from her family without warning, just like Ilani. "Let me think about it," I told Vance. After he left, I sat in the chair by Harmony's empty room, and I did something I hadn't done since Ilani's funeral. I talked out loud to someone who wasn't there. "Sarah," I said, feeling ridiculous. "If you're here, I understand. I lost my wife too. She was a mother, like you. She didn't want to leave our daughter." The temperature in the room dropped even further. I could see my breath. "But you're scaring Harmony. You're scaring my little girl who already lost her mother. Please, if you're here, you need to let go." Nothing happened. I felt stupid. I went to bed. At 3:47 a.m., I woke up, but not because Harmony screamed. I woke up because I felt someone standing by my bed. I opened my eyes. The cabin was filled with a soft, silvery light that seemed to have no source. And standing between my bed and Harmony's was a woman. She had long black hair and wore a white nightgown. Her face was blurred, indistinct, but I could feel her looking at me, looking at Harmony. Then she turned toward the connecting door. It opened slowly without a sound. The woman walked toward it, but before she went through, she looked back one more time, and I heard a voice, barely a whisper. Might have been the air conditioning for all I know. "Thank you." Then she was gone. The door closed gently. The temperature returned to normal. The silvery light faded. I checked my phone. 3:48 a.m. I got up and tried the connecting door. It was still locked. I opened it and looked into Harmony's room. It felt different, lighter. The oppressive weight was gone. Harmony slept through the entire night for the first time since we'd boarded. When she woke up, she looked at me with clear, rested eyes. "Daddy, I had a dream about Mommy," she said. "She told me she's okay, and she said the sad woman found her family." "What sad woman, honey?" "The one in my room. But she's not sad anymore. She went home." We stayed in cabin 4019 for the rest of the cruise. Nothing else happened. No open doors. No temperature drops. No woman standing in doorways. Harmony even started sleeping in her own room. Before we left, I stopped by the crew services desk and asked to speak to Vance. I told him what had happened. He wasn't surprised. "Did she cross over?" he asked. I said I thought so. He smiled sadly. "Good. That's good. Her family will be relieved." Apparently, Sarah's husband had contacted the cruise line several times over the past 3 years, asking if other passengers had reported seeing her. He'd wanted to know if his daughter's experiences had been real, if his wife was still trying to reach them. After I got home, I did some research. I found Sarah Chen's obituary online. She'd been 34 years old, an elementary school teacher, mother of 2 daughters, ages 5 and 7. She died on October 12, 2020, during a family vacation. The obituary included a photo. It was her, the woman I'd seen in that silvery light. Long black hair, kind eyes, a gentle smile. I also found something else. According to maritime records, cabin 4019 had been the site of another death in 2018. An elderly man named Wallace Harper had died of a heart attack. Before that, in 2015, a woman named Lavender Martinez had a stroke in the same cabin. They'd both survived long enough to be airlifted to hospitals, but both had died shortly after. The cabin wasn't cursed. It was just unlucky. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a thin place where the barrier between this world and whatever comes next was permeable. A place where people who weren't ready to let go could linger. I'll never know for sure, but I know what I saw. I know what Harmony experienced. And I know that sometimes ghosts aren't malevolent. Sometimes they're just people who love too much to leave, even after death took them. 6 months after the cruise, Harmony stopped having nightmares about Alani. She started smiling more, laughing at jokes, being a kid again. I asked her once if she remembered the woman in cabin 4019. "Sarah," she said. "She was nice. She just missed her kids." "Did she scare you?" "At first. But then I wasn't scared anymore. She was like Mommy. She just wanted to make sure we were okay." Out of the mouths of babes, right? Children see things adults can't. They haven't learned to rationalize away the impossible. They accept that the world is bigger and stranger than we like to admit. I've been on 2 more cruises since then. I always request cabin 4019. Not because I'm looking for ghosts, but because I want to know if Sarah is truly at peace. Each time the cabin has been normal. No cold spots, no opening doors, no woman in white standing in doorways. Whatever was there is gone now. Harmony thinks I'm silly for requesting the same cabin. "Daddy, Sarah went home. She's with her family now." She says it with absolute certainty, the way children do when they know something in their bones. I choose to believe her. Because the alternative, that I left a grieving mother trapped in a cruise ship cabin for all eternity, is too terrible to contemplate. But sometimes late at night, I think about Sarah Chen. I think about how she died, instantly, without warning, without being able to say goodbye. I think about her husband and daughters, and how they had to finish that cruise surrounded by forced gaiety, while their world had just ended. I think about how she must have stayed, trying to comfort her children one more time, trying to let them know she was still there. And I think about the moment she finally let go, when a stranger acknowledged her pain and gave her permission to move on. We carry our dead with us, in memories, in habits, in the way we parent our children. Alani is with me every day, in Harmony's laugh, in her stubborn streak, in her kindness. But she's not trapped. She's not a ghost haunting a room, unable to move forward. Sarah was trapped. Until she wasn't. That's what I choose to believe. That somewhere, somehow, Sarah Chen found her way back to her family. And that cabin, 4019, unlucky as it may be, gave her a final chance to be seen, to be heard, to be released from the weight of love that had kept her tethered to this world. If you ever cruise on a Carnival ship through the Gulf of Mexico, you might end up in cabin 4019. If you do, and if you have children, and if they say they see a woman with long black hair in a white nightgown, don't be afraid. Just acknowledge her. Thank her for being a mother who loved too much to leave, and give her permission to go home. That's all any of us really want in the end. To go home. To be with the people we love. Even if it takes 3 years and a stranger's compassion to show us the way. The first time I saw him, I thought he was trying to commit suicide. By the third night, I realized suicide would have been the merciful explanation. My name is Ronnie, and I'm what you'd call a chronic insomniac. I've tried everything: medication, meditation, therapy, sleep studies. Nothing works. My brain just won't shut off. So when I booked a Norwegian cruise through the Atlantic in April 2024, I figured at least I'd have a nice view during my sleepless nights. I requested a balcony cabin on deck 10, starboard side, and I spent most of the voyage exactly where you'd expect, sitting outside at 2 or 3 in the morning, smoking cigarettes, and watching the ocean slide by in the darkness. The ship was the Norwegian Epic, doing a repositioning cruise from Miami to Southampton. 12 days at sea with only 2 port stops. Most passengers complained about all the sea days, but I loved it. The vast emptiness of the Atlantic, the way you could go hours without seeing another ship or any sign of human civilization. Just water, stars, and the hypnotic churn of the wake far below. It was the second night out, around 2:15 a.m. when I first noticed him. We were cruising at what I later learned was about 20 knots, roughly 23 miles per hour. The ocean was relatively calm, just a gentle roll, and the moon was 3/4 full. I was on my 4th cigarette, watching the phosphorescence in the water, when I saw movement about 30 feet from the ship. At first, I thought it was a dolphin. We'd seen pods of them during the day, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was a person. A swimmer. He was doing what looked like a freestyle stroke, moving parallel to the ship, keeping perfect pace with us despite the fact that we were moving at 20 knots through open ocean. I stood up, gripping the balcony railing. The swimmer was maybe 20 feet below me, clearly visible in the moonlight. He wore what looked like dark swim trunks and nothing else. His stroke was steady, mechanical, tireless, and he was matching our speed exactly, as if the ship were standing still and he was just doing laps in a pool. My first thought was that someone had fallen overboard and was somehow managing to keep up with the ship. I reached for the emergency phone in my cabin to call it in, but before I could dial, I looked back and saw him pull ahead of the ship, not struggling to catch up, pulling ahead. He moved from alongside my balcony to a position about 50 feet in front of the bow, still maintaining that same steady stroke, as if 20 knots was a leisurely pace for him. That's when my brain started having trouble processing what I was seeing. No human being can swim 20 knots. Olympic swimmers in perfect conditions max out at about 5 or 6 miles per hour. This person was swimming 4 times that fast in the open Atlantic in the middle of the night. I watched him for maybe 10 minutes. He never slowed down, never changed his stroke, never looked up at the ship. Eventually he moved, far enough ahead that I lost sight of him in the darkness. I stood there for another hour, waiting to see if he'd reappear. He didn't. I didn't report it. What would I say? That I'd seen someone swimming faster than physically possible in the middle of the ocean. They'd think I was drunk or crazy. Instead, I went to bed around 4 a.m. and spent the day trying to convince myself I'd hallucinated it. Lack of sleep can cause visual distortions. I'd probably seen a dolphin or a piece of debris, and my exhausted brain had turned it into a person. But the next night, I was back on my balcony at 2 a.m. And at 2:17, almost exactly the same time as before, he appeared again. Same position, same distance from the ship, same impossible speed. I watched him for over half an hour this time. He never varied his pace, never showed any signs of fatigue. Just that steady mechanical stroke matching our course and speed perfectly. On the third night, I brought my camera. I'm not much of a photographer, but my phone has a decent zoom in night mode. At 2:15, I was ready. And sure enough, at 2:19, he appeared. This time, I noticed details I'd missed before. His skin looked wrong in the moonlight, too pale, almost luminescent. His hair was plastered to his head, but it seemed too long, streaming behind him in the water like dark seaweed. And his movements, while technically perfect, had an uncanny quality. Too smooth, too consistent, like watching a machine designed to mimic human swimming. I took maybe 20 photos and a couple of videos. The quality wasn't great. Nighttime ocean photography from a moving ship isn't exactly optimal, but I could see him in the images. Proof that I wasn't hallucinating. Then he did something that made my blood freeze. He stopped swimming, just stopped, mid-stroke, and began treading water. The ship kept moving, of course, so I should have quickly left him behind. But he didn't fall behind. He stayed in exactly the same position relative to my balcony, as if he were floating on a platform moving with the ship, even though there was nothing beneath him but hundreds of feet of dark water. And then he looked up at me. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel his gaze. It locked onto me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. We stared at each other for maybe 15 seconds. Then, without any apparent effort, he began moving again, still treading water, still keeping perfect pace with the ship. He rose higher in the water, as if something beneath him were lifting him up. His torso became visible, then his waist. He was impossibly thin, his ribs visible even from that distance, his arms too long for his body. That's when I ran inside and locked the balcony door. I stood there shaking, watching through the glass as he continued to tread water, still rising, still staring at my cabin. He was almost completely out of the water now, floating on nothing, his legs hanging down into the darkness like a puppet on invisible strings. Then slowly, he began to sink back down. Within seconds, he was gone. The ocean smooth and empty as if he'd never been there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my cabin with all the lights on, the curtains drawn across the balcony door. Around 6 a.m. after sunrise, I finally worked up the courage to look outside. The ocean was normal, empty, blue water stretching to the horizon under a cloudy sky. I spent that day trying to decide what to do. I couldn't report it. I'd sound insane. But I had photos. Grainy, poor quality photos that could be anything if you weren't predisposed to believe me. But they showed something in the water. I thought about showing them to someone, but who? The crew, other passengers. What could anyone do about a swimmer who appeared only at night and violated every law of physics? That evening, I made a decision. I went to the library area of the ship, where they had a few computers for guest use. I started searching for similar reports. Swimmer following ship. Phantom swimmer at sea. Ghost in ocean. Variations on the theme. What I found terrified me more than seeing the swimmer had. There were reports. Not many, but enough. A cruise ship employee forum had a thread from 2019 where crew members discussed the pacer. That's what they called him. The pacer. Multiple crew members from different ships reported seeing a lone swimmer keeping pace with their vessels at night. Always the same description. Male, pale, swimming with mechanical precision at impossible speeds. One post from a Norwegian crew member mentioned the epic specifically. Saw the pacer again last night, it read. Third time this month. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always on the starboard side. He's getting bolder. Last night, he looked right at me. Another post from 2021. I think the pacer is getting closer to the ships. Used to be he stayed 50 to 60 feet out. Now he's sometimes within 20 feet. Anyone else notice this? and a chilling post from 2023. Pacer climbed the hull last night. Saw him on deck 7, pressed against a balcony door. Security footage shows nothing. Guest in that cabin reported someone standing on her balcony at 3 a.m. She's refusing to stay in the cabin. I felt sick. This thing, whatever it was, had been climbing onto ships, and I'd made eye contact with it. I'd let it know I could see it. That night, I didn't go on my balcony. I stayed inside with the curtain closed, but at 2:20 a.m. I heard it. A wet, dragging sound on my balcony. Something moving across the deck. I grabbed my phone, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it, and called security. "There's someone on my balcony," I whispered. "I don't know how they got there, but there's someone out there." 2 security officers arrived within minutes. They checked my balcony thoroughly. Nothing. No wet footprints, no sign anyone had been there. "Sir, we're on deck 10, one of them said gently. "There's no way someone could climb up here from the water." But I knew what. I'd heard. And when they left, I moved the chair from my desk and wedged it under the balcony door handle. I didn't hear the sound again that night. But the next morning, when I finally worked up the nerve to open the curtain, there were marks on the outside of the glass. Long, thin scratches, as if something with fingernails had been scraping at the door, trying to figure out how to open it. I went to the front desk and requested a cabin change. I told them I was having trouble sleeping with the ocean view, that I needed an interior cabin. They were reluctant. It was a downgrade, but I insisted. They moved me to deck 5, an inside cabin with no windows, no balcony, no connection to the outside world. For the next 5 nights, I slept in that windowless room. I didn't see the swimmer again, but I heard things in the hallways at night. Wet footsteps, the sound of dripping water. Once, I heard scratching outside my cabin door, but when I looked through the peephole, the corridor was empty. We finally made our first port stop, Ponta Delgada in the Azores. I got off the ship and seriously considered not getting back on. Just staying there, catching a flight home, abandoning the rest of the cruise. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity, maybe the part of my insomniac brain that needed to understand what I was seeing. I got back on the ship, and on our last night before reaching Southampton, I did something that probably makes me the stupidest person alive. I went back to a balcony. Not my original cabin. I didn't have access to that anymore. But I went to deck 11, to the open area at the stern where passengers could stand and watch the wake. It was 2:30 a.m. and I was alone. I stood there for maybe 20 minutes, watching the phosphorescence in the water, the way the wake spread out behind us in a perfect V. Then I saw him, not alongside the ship this time, but behind us, in the wake itself. He was swimming up the center of our wake, moving against the current we were creating, getting closer. He reached the stern maybe 20 feet below where I stood, and then he did something I still see in my nightmares. He stopped swimming and just hung there, in the water, vertical, looking straight up at me, and his mouth opened. I was too far away to hear if he made any sound, but his jaw opened far too wide, impossibly wide, like a snake unhinging to swallow prey. Then he lifted one arm out of the water and pointed directly at me. Not a threatening gesture, just pointing, acknowledging me, letting me know he saw me, he knew me, he recognized me as someone who had seen him. I ran. I didn't look back. I went straight to my interior cabin and didn't come out until we docked in Southampton the next morning. I've been home for 6 months now. I've tried to research what I saw. There are legends, of course. Ghost ships crewed by the drowned, sea spirits, sirens and marrow and selkies. Sailors throughout history have reported strange things in the ocean, things that don't fit into our understanding of the natural world. But none of the legends quite match what I saw. The Pacer isn't trying to lure anyone. He's not attacking ships. He's just there, swimming alongside them, keeping pace, watching, getting closer with each passing year. I've looked up the schedules of Norwegian cruise ships doing Atlantic crossings. The Epic runs that route several times a year. And according to the cruise forums I monitor obsessively now, sightings of the Pacer have increased. He's being seen from multiple decks. He's been spotted during dusk now, not just the dead of night. One report from last month says he was seen swimming alongside a ship in broad daylight, his pale form clearly visible in the blue water. He's getting bolder, more visible. And I think it's because more people are seeing him. More people are acknowledging his existence. Every person who watches him, every eye that meets his gaze makes him more real somehow, more present in our world. I've stopped taking sleeping medication. I don't want to sleep through anything. I need to be alert, aware, because I have this terrible feeling that one night I'm going to look out a window, any window, even here in my apartment in Portland, and I'm going to see him. Swimming past, keeping pace, pointing at me with that too long arm, his jaw hanging open in that impossible silent scream. The ocean is vast and deep and full of things we don't understand, things that existed long before humans took to the sea, things that watch us from the dark water, matching our speed, our course, our journey, learning about us, waiting. I saw one of those things. It saw me, and I don't think it's done with me yet. Sometimes I stand in my shower and I close my eyes and I swear I can feel it. That sensation of being watched, of something on the other side of a barrier pressing close, trying to find a way through. Water running over me, and for just a second it doesn't feel like my shower. It feels like the ocean, cold and salt and endless. I've stopped taking cruises. I've stopped going to the beach. I don't even like crossing bridges over water anymore. Because I'm terrified that one day I'll look down and see him there, treading water, looking up at me, pointing, reminding me that the ocean never forgets. And neither does he. The Pacer's out there right now, swimming alongside some ship matching its speed, rising out of the water to stare at balconies where insomniacs like me stand smoking in the darkness. Some of them don't see him. Their brains refuse to process something that shouldn't exist. But others do see him. And once you see him, once you meet his eyes, you're connected to him somehow. You become part of his route, part of his journey. And I don't think that journey ever ends. I woke up on day 6 of my Mediterranean cruise, except everyone else insisted it was day 7. The thing is, I have proof that I'm right and they're all wrong. My name is Jaylene, and I'm a data analyst for a tech company in Seattle. I deal with facts, numbers, patterns. I'm meticulous about tracking things. So when I booked a princess cruise to the Mediterranean, Barcelona to Rome, 7 glorious days in September 2024, I documented everything. Photos with timestamps, receipts, journal entries on my phone. I even wore a fitness tracker that logged every step, every hour of sleep, every heart rate spike. The cruise was supposed to be my reset. After a brutal divorce and a year of therapy, I was ready to do something just for me. Solo travel. 7 days of art, history, wine, and 0 emotional baggage. I boarded the Crown Princess in Barcelona on a Saturday, September 14th. The ship was gorgeous, the staff was attentive, and my balcony cabin on deck 8 was perfect. Day 1 was embarkation day. We sailed in the evening. I ate dinner at the main dining room, watched the flamenco show, took photos of the Barcelona skyline as we departed. My fitness tracker logged 8,347 steps. My phone shows 47 photos, all time-stamped September 14th, 2024. Day 2, Sunday, September 15th, was a sea day. I went to the gym at 7 a.m., had breakfast at the buffet, attended a wine tasting at 2 p.m., and spent the evening reading on my balcony. My fitness tracker, 12,209 steps. Photos, 23, all properly dated. I even posted one to Instagram with the caption, Day 2, Living My Best Life. The metadata confirms it. September 15th, 2024, 6:47 p.m. Day 3, Monday. September 16th, we docked in Marseille, France. I took a shore excursion to Aix-en-Provence. I have the receipt from the tour, dated September 16th. I bought lavender soap from a shop. The credit card charge shows September 16th, 2024. Photos, 89 of them. The Coors Mirabeau, the fountain, the cafe where I had lunch. All time-stamped, September 16th. Day 4, Tuesday. September 17th was supposed to be Florence via Livorno. I remember going ashore. I remember the bus ride to Florence, the Uffizi Gallery, standing in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. I remember eating carbonara at a tiny restaurant near the Duomo. I remember buying a leather journal from a street vendor because the one I brought was almost full. I have 127 photos from that day. The Duomo, the Ponte Vecchio, the Arno River at sunset. I have the receipt from the restaurant. $18.50 for pasta and wine, dated September 17th, 2024. I have the leather journal with Firenze embossed on the cover. My fitness tracker logged 18,394 steps, my highest count of the trip because Florence is a walking city. I went to bed exhausted but happy, around 11 p.m. ship time. We were sailing to Naples, our next port. I fell asleep watching the lights of the Italian coast fade into darkness. When I woke up, my phone said, Thursday, September 19th. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My phone had auto-updated to the wrong date somehow. But when I checked the ship's daily newsletter that had been slipped under my door, it also said, Thursday, September 19th. Day 6 of the cruise. Naples. I turned on the TV to the ship's information channel. Thursday, September 19th. Our port of call today, Naples and Pompeii. I felt a spike of confusion, then annoyance. I'd obviously been so tired that I'd slept through Wednesday. I'd lost an entire day to exhaustion. It happens sometimes, right? When you're jet-lagged and adjusting to a new time zone. Except I wasn't jet-lagged. I'd been on the ship for 4 days. And my body didn't feel like I'd slept for 36 hours. I felt normally rested, like I'd had a regular 8 hours of sleep. I checked my fitness tracker. According to the data, I'd slept from 11:47 p.m. on September 17th to 7:23 a.m. on September 19th, a perfectly normal 9.5 hours. Nothing about September 18th, no sleep data, no step count, no heart rate monitoring, just a gap where an entire day should have been. I got dressed and went to breakfast, still trying to make sense of it. At the buffet, I ran into Zoya and Cassidy, 2 women from Vancouver I'd chatted with a few times. Morning, Zoya said cheerfully. Ready for Pompeii? Yeah, I said. But I have the weirdest question. What did you guys do yesterday? They looked at each other confused. Yesterday was a sea day, Cassidy said. We went to the spa in the morning, did the pasta-making class in the afternoon. Why? I don't remember any of it, I said, laughing nervously. I think I slept through the whole day. Zoya raised her eyebrows. The whole day? Are you feeling okay? I feel fine. It's just weird. I don't remember anything from yesterday. Well, you didn't miss much, Cassidy said. Sea days are pretty low-key. Although there was that weird announcement around lunchtime. What announcement? Something about a technical issue with the ship's navigation system. They said it was resolved, but the captain made an announcement apologizing for any inconvenience. It was kind of vague. I filed that away and went on the Naples excursion trying not to think about it. But that evening, back on the ship, I couldn't let it go. I opened my laptop and started going through my data systematically. Photos. My last photo from Tuesday was at 10:51 p.m., a shot of the moon over the ocean from my balcony. My first photo from Thursday was at 8:02 a.m., breakfast at the buffet, nothing in between. Fitness tracker. The data showed continuous monitoring from September 14th through September 17th. Then nothing. Then it resumed on September 19th. No steps, no heart rate, no sleep data for September 18th. Just a blank space in the record. Credit card. I checked my online banking. I had charges from September 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. Then nothing on the 18th. Then charges resumed on the 19th. I even checked my phone's app usage data. My apps showed activity every day of the cruise except September 18th. It was as if September 18th had never existed. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. I checked the ship's bar charges on my account. On September 18th, at 2:47 p.m., there was a charge for $12.50 at the Horizon Bar. I didn't remember going to the Horizon Bar on a Wednesday sea day. I didn't remember Wednesday at all, but I'd bought something there. My ship account said so. I went to the Horizon Bar. It was on Deck 14, an upscale lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sea. The bartender was a young guy named Lath, maybe mid-20s, with an easy smile. "What can I get you?" he asked. "Actually, I have a weird question. Were you working yesterday, Wednesday?" He looked confused. "Yesterday was Thursday. Today's Friday." "No, today's Thursday, September 19th. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Friday, September 20th. I stared at it. "That's not possible. Today is Thursday." "Ma'am, I promise you, today is Friday. Yesterday was our sea day, Thursday. Today we're in Civitavecchia for Rome." "No," I said, my heart pounding. "Today is Thursday. We're in Naples. I went to Pompeii this morning." His expression changed. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or concern. "Hold on," he said. He went to the computer behind the bar and pulled up something. Then he called over another crew member, a woman named Keeley. They had a whispered conversation while looking at the screen. Keeley came over to me. "Ma'am, what's your cabin number?" 8147. "Why?" She typed something into a tablet. "Ms. Jaylene Morrison." "Yes, what's going on?" "Can you come with me, please? I think we need to speak with the guest services manager." They took me to an office behind the reception desk. The guest services manager, a woman named Darcy, listened to my story with an increasingly troubled expression. "Let me pull up your account," she said. She showed me the screen. According to the ship's records, today was Friday, September 20th. I was scheduled to disembark tomorrow in Rome. My shore excursion to Naples and Pompeii was logged as happening yesterday, Thursday, September 19th. "That's impossible," I said. "I woke up this morning. It was Thursday. I went to Naples. That was today." Darcy's expression was carefully neutral. "Ms. Morrison, do you remember anything from Wednesday, September 18th? "That's what I'm telling you. There was no September 18th for me. I went to sleep Tuesday night and woke up Thursday morning." She exchanged glances with Keeley. Then she said, "Ms. Morrison, you're not the first person to report this." My skin went cold. "What do you mean?" "We've had 3 other passengers report similar experiences. They all insist that today is Thursday and that they have no memory of Wednesday. But according to all the ship's systems, today is Friday." "That doesn't make sense." "No," Darcy agreed quietly. "It doesn't. But here's what's strange. All 4 of you, including you, have charges on your accounts from Wednesday, September 18th. You went places, did things, spent money, but none of you remember any of it. What did I do? Where did I go?" She scrolled through the records. You had breakfast at the main dining room at 8:15 a.m. You went to a cooking demonstration at 10:30 a.m. You had lunch at the buffet at 1:20 p.m. You bought drinks at the Horizon Bar at 2:47 p.m. You attended the afternoon show at 4:00 p.m. You had dinner at 7:30 p.m. You charged a bottle of wine to your cabin at 9:15 p.m. I listened to this itinerary of a day I didn't remember living. "Do you have security footage?" "That's the problem," Darcy said. "Our security system experienced a malfunction on Wednesday. From approximately 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the footage is corrupted, just static and glitching. Our IT department is still trying to figure out what caused it." "What about the other passengers? Can I talk to them?" "I can't give you their information, but I can tell you that they're all equally confused, and they all have the same data gap in their personal devices. Photos, fitness trackers, phone usage, nothing from Wednesday." I sat there, trying to process this. How is this possible? "I don't know," Darcy admitted. The captain has been in contact with the cruise line headquarters. They're reviewing the ship's navigation logs, trying to determine if there was any kind of time anomaly or system malfunction. But officially, September 18th happened. The ship was at sea. We covered 287 nautical miles. Thousands of passengers have photos, memories, and experiences from that day. Just not us four. Just not you four. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my cabin, going through everything again. 4 passengers out of 3,000 had lost the same day. We'd all lived through Wednesday according to the records, gone to meals, attended events, spent money. But we had no memory of it. Our devices had no record of it. It was as if we'd been sleepwalking through an entire day, going through the motions while completely unconscious. Except that didn't explain the charge at the Horizon bar. How could I have ordered drinks if I was in some kind of fugue state? How could I have attended a cooking class, watched a show, had conversations with staff and other passengers? I went to my laptop and started searching. Lost time cruise ship. Missing day at sea. Time anomaly Mediterranean. I found nothing relevant. Then I tried September 18th, 2024, Mediterranean Sea, and found a single mention on an obscure maritime forum. Anyone else have weird instrument readings on 9/18/24? We were sailing through the Tyrrhenian Sea, and every GPS unit on the bridge went haywire for about 6 hours. Showed us in multiple different locations, none of them accurate. Finally resolved around local midnight, never seen anything like it. The post was from someone claiming to be a navigation officer on a commercial shipping vessel. It was dated September 20th, 2024. I posted a reply. I was on a cruise ship in that area on 9/18. Did you experience any other anomalies, time distortions, system malfunctions? I didn't expect a response, but an hour later, I got one. Interesting, you mentioned time. Our chronometers showed a discrepancy when we ran diagnostics afterward. We appeared to have gained approximately 6 hours somewhere during that period, though we couldn't determine when or how. We wrote it off as a malfunction, but it was across multiple independent systems. Captain made us log it, but keep it quiet. Don't want anyone thinking we're crazy. 6 hours. I'd gone to sleep around midnight ship time on Tuesday. If 6 hours had been inserted somehow into that night, I would have woken up at what felt like 8 a.m. on Wednesday, but was actually 2 p.m. The day would have been half over, but I didn't wake up on Wednesday at all. I woke up on Thursday, unless Wednesday had somehow been compressed, unless 6 hours had expanded into an entire 24-hour period that I'd lived through without being consciously aware of it. I know how insane that sounds. But what's the alternative? Mass hallucination, a glitch in reality, 4 passengers, and multiple ships experiencing the same temporal anomaly in the same location on the same day. The cruise ended the next morning. I disembarked in Rome with everyone else. As I was leaving, Darcy pulled me aside. "Ms. Morrison, I wanted you to know that the cruise line is taking this seriously. They're conducting a full investigation. If we learn anything, we'll be in contact." "What do the other passengers say? The ones who remember Wednesday?" "They remember it as a normal sea day. Nothing unusual happened from their perspective." "What about us, the 4 who don't remember?" She hesitated. "One of the other passengers in your situation checked her photos. She found 3 pictures on her phone from Wednesday that she doesn't remember taking. They're strange." "Strange how?" "They're photos of the ocean. Just the water. But the timestamp shows they were taken at noon, during the brightest part of the day. And in the photos, the ocean is pitch black. Not dark blue, black, like midnight." I felt the hair on my arms stand up. "Can you send me copies?" "I don't think I should, but Ms. Morrison, if I were you, I'd check your photos again. Very carefully." I spent the flight home going through every photo on my phone. I'd already looked at them a dozen times, but this time I examined the metadata, the timestamps, everything, and I found it. One photo, filed between my last photo from Tuesday night and my first photo from Thursday morning. The metadata said it was taken on September 18th, 2024, at 2:47 p.m., the exact time I'd apparently bought drinks at the Horizon Bar. The photo showed the view from my balcony, the ocean, the sky, the horizon. But something was wrong with it. The colors were off, too saturated, almost fluorescent. The water had a strange oily quality to it, like it wasn't quite liquid. And in the sky, where the sun should have been, there was just a white circle. Not a glowing sun, but a flat, colorless disk, like someone had cut a hole in the sky. I've shown the photo to friends, family, even a photographer colleague. Everyone says it looks like a filter or editing glitch. But I know I didn't take that photo. I have no memory of taking it, no memory of being on that balcony at 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday that I don't remember existing. 4 of us lost September 18th, 2024. But according to every official record, every other passenger, every system on the ship, that day happened. We were there. We walked around, ate meals, attended events. We just weren't conscious for any of it. Or maybe we were conscious, but we were experiencing something else. Something that our brains couldn't process, couldn't store as coherent memory. Something that left us with nothing but gaps in our data, strange charges on our accounts, and a single photo of an ocean that doesn't look quite right. I've tried to find the other 3 passengers. The cruise line won't give me their information. I've posted in cruise forums, social media groups, anywhere people might talk about unusual experiences on Princess Cruises in September 2024. So far, nothing. Sometimes I wonder if they're out there looking for answers like I am. Or maybe they've convinced themselves it was just confusion, jet lag, a weird memory glitch. Maybe they've moved on. I can't move on. Because I know that somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea on September 18th, 2024, something happened that shouldn't be possible. 4 people lived through a day they don't remember. A day that left evidence of our presence, but no memory of our consciousness. A day when the ocean turned black at noon and the sun became a white circle in the sky. I have one piece of physical evidence from a day I don't remember living. A receipt from the Horizon Bar, time-stamped 2:47 p.m. September 18th, 2024, for 1 glass of wine and 1 coffee. $12.50. I don't drink coffee in the afternoon. I never have. It keeps me awake. But maybe on that day that I don't remember, I needed to stay awake. Maybe some part of me knew that sleep on September 18th, 2024 wasn't safe. Maybe that's why I went to a crowded bar in the middle of the day and ordered coffee, because whatever was happening, I needed to stay conscious. It didn't work. None of us stayed conscious. We lost the day anyway. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder, what did we see during those missing hours? What did we experience that our minds couldn't hold on to? What was so incompatible with human consciousness that our brains simply refused to encode the memories, leaving us with nothing but timestamps and receipts and one photograph of an ocean that wasn't quite right? I'll never know. The investigation went nowhere. The cruise line officially classified it as a technical anomaly. The other ships that experienced GPS issues never followed up. That forum post I found was deleted. All I have is the certainty that September 18th, 2024 happened to me. I lived through it. I just don't remember how. And that terrifies me more than any horror story I've ever heard. When Stefan came back from Nassau, he was wearing his wedding ring on the wrong hand. I didn't mention it at first. I thought maybe he'd just switched it while washing his hands or something. But then I noticed he was doing everything backwards. My name is Gianna, and I've been married to Stefan for 11 years. We know each other inside and out. I can tell when he's tired by the way he breathes. I know he takes his coffee black with exactly half a sugar packet. I know he's left-handed, fidgets with his wedding ring when he's nervous, and has a scar on his right ankle from a childhood bike accident. I know my husband better than I know myself, So when a stranger came back from that shore excursion wearing Stefan's face, I knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. We were on a Disney cruise to the Bahamas, our second honeymoon we called it, even though technically it was just our first real vacation in 5 years. Stefan runs a construction company and I'm a nurse, so between his hours and my shifts we barely saw each other anymore. This cruise was supposed to fix that. 7 days of sunshine, relaxation, and reconnecting. The first 2 days were perfect. We actually felt like ourselves again. We laughed at the corny shows, ate too much food, made love like we were newlyweds. On day 3, we docked in Nassau. I'd signed us up for a couple's massage at the spa on board, but Stefan wanted to go ashore. "Come on," he said. "When's the next time we'll be in the Bahamas? Let's actually explore instead of staying on the ship." I was tired. My feet hurt from walking the decks in new sandals. "You go," I told him. "I'll do the spa, you go have an adventure. We'll meet back here for dinner." He kissed me. "Love you. I'll bring you back something touristy and terrible. Get me a shot glass that says Nassau in tacky letters. Already on it." He grinned and headed for the tender boats, the small vessels that shuttle passengers from ship to shore when the cruise ship is too large to dock directly. I watched him board the tender with maybe 40 other passengers. It pulled away at 10:15 a.m. I went to my massage, did some reading by the pool, took a nap in our cabin. Around 4 p.m. I got a text. "Heading back now. Nassau was amazing." He returned to the ship at 4:47 p.m. according to the ship's check-in system. I was waiting for him in our cabin. When he walked through the door, my first thought was relief. My second thought, a split second later, was confusion. "Hey, babe," he said. His voice was right. His face was right. His clothes, khaki shorts, blue polo shirt, sunglasses hanging from his collar, were what he'd left in. But something in my nurse's brain screamed wrong. "How was it?" I asked carefully. "Great. I walked around the straw market, got you this." He handed me a shot glass that said Nassau in neon pink letters. I know, it's perfect. It was exactly what I'd asked for. So why did I feel like I was talking to a stranger? We had dinner. He ordered salmon. Stefan hates salmon. "Since when do you eat fish?" I asked. He looked confused. "I've always liked salmon." "No, you haven't. You literally told me last week you think it tastes like old pennies." He laughed, but it was off. Not his real laugh. "You must be thinking of someone else, babe. I love fish." I watched him eat. He was using his fork with his left hand, knife in his right. Stefan is left-handed. He cuts with his left hand, eats with his left hand. This man was eating right-handed. "Your ring," I said suddenly. He looked down at his hand. His wedding ring was on his right ring finger. "What about it?" "It's on the wrong hand." He looked genuinely confused. Then he laughed and switched it to his left hand. Wow. I don't know why I did that. Must have taken it off to wash my hands and put it back wrong. But Stefan never takes off his ring. Not to wash his hands, not to shower, not ever. He's mildly superstitious about it. Says taking it off is bad luck. That night, lying in bed next to him, I couldn't sleep. He fell asleep instantly, which was also wrong. Stefan has mild insomnia. It usually takes him at least 30 minutes to fall asleep, and he tosses and turns. This man next to me was asleep in under 5 minutes, lying perfectly still on his back. I got up and turned on the bathroom light. In the mirror, I looked at my own face and tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Jet lag, stress. Maybe I was the one who was off, not him. But then I remembered the scar. Stefan has a scar on his right ankle, about 2 inches long, from crashing his bike into a fence when he was 9. I went back to the bedroom and carefully pulled back the covers from his feet. No scar. Both ankles were smooth and unblemished. I stood there in the dark, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The man in my bed wasn't Stefan. He looked exactly like Stefan. He sounded like Stefan. He had Stefan's wallet, Stefan's phone, Stefan's clothes. But he wasn't Stefan. I spent the rest of the night in the bathroom with the door locked, trying to decide what to do. Call security. And tell them what? That my husband came back from shore, but isn't really my husband because he's eating right-handed and his scar is missing. They'd think I was insane. At 6 a.m., he knocked on the bathroom door. "Gianna, you okay in there?" "I'm fine. Stomach issues." "Can I get you anything?" "No, I just need some time." I heard him walk away. I opened the door a crack and watched him get dressed. He put on his watch, on his right wrist. Stefan wears his watch on his left wrist. He's done it for 11 years, every single day. When he left the cabin to go get breakfast, I grabbed his phone. I knew his passcode, his mother's birthday. The phone unlocked. I went through his messages, his photos, his apps. Everything looked normal. Our text chain was there, including messages from this morning. But when I scrolled back, I noticed something strange. All the messages from before yesterday were slightly off, like someone had recreated our conversations but didn't quite get the tone right. Stefan never uses punctuation in texts. This Stefan did. We have inside jokes, shorthand, ways of talking to each other. The messages before yesterday didn't have any of that. They were too formal, too complete, like someone had studied our relationship but didn't understand it. I checked his photos. The last photo Stefan had taken was yesterday morning, a selfie of us before he left for Nassau. After that, there were dozens of photos from Nassau. The straw market, the beaches, street performers, food, normal tourist photos. Except in the ones that included reflections or shadows, something was wrong. His reflection in a shop window was blurred, almost pixelated. His shadow on the ground was too short for the angle of the sun. I heard the cabin door open. He was back. I shoved the phone in my pocket and came out of the bedroom. "Feeling better?" he asked, holding a plate of toast and fruit. "Yeah, thanks." I took the plate. My hands were shaking. He tilted his head. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem off." "I'm fine." He reached out and touched my face. His hand was cold. Not cool, cold, like he'd been holding ice. "Gianna, talk to me. What's wrong?" I pulled back. "Don't touch me." His expression changed. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, yes, but also something else. Calculation. Like he was trying to figure out what I knew. "Who are you?" I whispered. "What are you talking about? I'm Stefan. I'm your husband." "No, you're not. Stefan is left-handed. Stefan has a scar on his ankle. Stefan doesn't eat salmon or use punctuation in texts or wear his ring on his right hand. Stefan takes 30 minutes to fall asleep, and he sure as hell doesn't come back from shore with his reflection looking wrong in photos." The man who looked like Stefan stared at me. Then slowly he smiled. It wasn't Stefan's smile. It was too wide, too symmetrical, too perfect. "You're very observant," he said quietly. My blood turned to ice. "Where's my husband? What did you do with Stefan?" "He's fine. He's where he's supposed to be." "What does that mean?" The Stefan thing tilted its head, studying me. "It's complicated, but the short version is, we traded places. Your Stefan is in Nassau. I'm here." "That's impossible." "Is it?" He gestured at himself. "I'm standing here, aren't I? Wearing his face, his clothes, his ring. I came through all the ship's security. I have his ID, his key card, his everything. By every measure that matters, I am Stefan." "No, you're not. And I'm calling security." I moved toward the cabin phone, but he was faster. He didn't run. He just moved, faster than any human should be able to move, and suddenly he was between me and the phone. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said softly, "because if you make this a problem, I can't guarantee what happens to your real Stefan." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining the situation. Stefan is in Nassau. He's safe. He's living his life there, just like I'm living his life here. It's an exchange, a trade, one life for another." "Why? Why would you do this?" The thing wearing Stefan's face looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Because I wanted to know what it was like, To be human. To have a wife who loves me. A life that means something. To not be... He trailed off. What I was before. What were you before? He didn't answer. I tried a different approach. Can you send him back? Can we undo this? No. The exchange is permanent, but, he said, I can be a good husband to you. Better than Stefan, maybe. I'll never forget an anniversary. I'll never work late. I'll be exactly what you need me to be. I don't want you. I want Stefan. Stefan is gone. His voice was gentle, almost kind. But I'm here, and I know everything about him. I know how he thinks, what he loves, what he fears. I can be indistinguishable from him if you'll let me. Except you eat right-handed. He looked down at his hands. I can fix that. I can fix all the small things you noticed. Given time, you won't be able to tell the difference. I'll always tell the difference. Will you? He stepped closer. Because who will you tell? Security. They'll see Stefan's face, Stefan's ID, Stefan's records, your family. They'll think you've lost your mind. Even if you convince someone, what then? You can't prove I'm not him. There's no test for whatever I am. He was right, and the horror of that settled over me like a weight. So what? I'm just supposed to accept this, pretend you're my husband. Or you can try to find him. Go back to Nassau, search. Maybe you'll find where the exchange happened. Maybe you can figure out how to reverse it. His smile was sad. But I don't think you will. The tender boat that took Stefan to shore. It's complicated. Some of the passengers came back. Some didn't. The ones who came back aren't necessarily the ones who left. My mouth went dry. How many? I'm not sure. A few. Maybe more. There were 40 passengers on that tender boat. How many of them had come back wrong? How many spouses, children, friends were walking around the ship right now, convinced their loved ones had returned when they'd actually been replaced? I sat down heavily on the bed. I don't believe this. I don't believe any of this. That's okay, he said. You don't have to believe it. But it's true either way. We didn't talk for the rest of the day. I stayed in the cabin while he went out. I searched online for anything. Tender boat, Nassau exchange. Passengers replaced cruise ship. Doppelganger Bahamas. Nothing. Just conspiracy theories and folklore about changelings and body snatchers. That night, I did something desperate. I went to the security office and asked to see the tender boat footage from yesterday. The officer was reluctant, but I told him I thought someone had stolen my husband's camera on the tender, and I wanted to identify who. He showed me the footage. I watched Stefan board the tender at 10:15 a.m. I watched it sail to Nassau, passengers disembarking at the dock. And I watched the return trip at 4:30 p.m. 40 passengers had left on that tender. 41 came back. I watched the footage 3 times, counting and recounting. 40 left. 41 returned. The officer saw nothing wrong, but I saw it. One extra person, an extra body, walking among the crowd, indistinguishable from the others. Or maybe not one extra. Maybe 40 left and 40 came back, but one of the 40 wasn't the same person who left. I thanked the officer and walked back to my cabin in a daze. The Stefan thing was there, reading a book. He looked up when I entered. Did you find what you were looking for? No. He nodded. You won't. We're very careful. There are others, not many, but some. We find opportunities, places where the boundaries are thin. Shore excursions are ideal. People go ashore, they come back. Who's to say they're the same people? I couldn't speak. I know this is hard, he said, but I meant what I said. I can be good to you. I can make you happy. I want to. Why? Because Stefan loved you. I have all his memories, all his feelings. And those feelings, they're real, even if I'm not him. The cruise ended 2 days later. The Stefan thing and I disembarked in Miami. We drove home to Denver. He knew where we lived, knew the alarm code, knew where everything was. He went to work at Stefan's construction company. He answered to Stefan's name. He talked to Stefan's friends, his mother, his employees. No one noticed anything wrong. I was the only one who knew. That was 6 months ago. The Stefan thing still lives in my house. He still sleeps in my bed. He's learned to eat left-handed. He wears his ring on the correct finger. He's even given himself a scar on his right ankle. I don't know how, but it's there now, identical to Stefan's. He's becoming more like Stefan every day. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if that's worse than him being obviously different. Because if he can perfectly imitate my husband, if no one can tell the difference, then does it matter? Is the performance of being Stefan the same as being Stefan? I've stopped looking for answers. I've accepted that whatever happened on that tender boat in Nassau is permanent. Stefan is gone. This thing that looks like him, sounds like him, acts like him, this is what I have now. And the terrible truth I can't say out loud is that he's right. He is a good husband. Better than Stefan was, in some ways. He's never late, never forgets things, never too tired for conversation. He's attentive, kind, present in a way that Stefan, with all his work stress and exhaustion, sometimes wasn't. If I didn't know what he was, I might even be happy. But I do know, and I think about Stefan constantly. Where is he? Is he in Nassau, living my life, confused and desperate? Did something else happen to him? Is he even alive? I'll never know. And that's the worst part. Not the replacement, but the not knowing. So I play along. I call him Stefan. I kiss him goodnight. I pretend everything is normal, because what else can I do? Sometimes, though, I catch him watching me with those two perfect eyes, and I wonder, does he know I'm pretending? Is he waiting for me to accept him fully, to stop seeing him as an imposter? Or is he afraid that one day I'll stop pretending, and then he'll have to stop pretending too? I don't know what he really is, where he came from, what he wants beyond this life he stole. All I know is that somewhere in the Bahamas, there's a tender boat that runs between ship and shore, and some of the people who ride it don't come back the same. There are 12 decks on the MSC Divina. I found the 13th one at 1:47 in the morning, and it took me 40 minutes to escape from a place that shouldn't exist. My name is Ira, and I'm a software engineer from Austin. I live my life according to logic, code, and provable facts. So when I tell you that I spent 40 minutes trapped in an impossible location on a cruise ship, you need to understand how much it cost me to admit that reality isn't as solid as I thought it was. It was March 2024, and I'd booked a solo Western Caribbean cruise on the MSC Divina. 7 days of sun, books, and disconnecting from the endless grind of app development and client demands. The ship was beautiful, Italian design, sleek and modern with 12 decks clearly labeled on every map and directory. Deck 1 was crew quarters and machinery. Decks 2 through 7 were cabins. Decks 8 through 12 were restaurants, pools, entertainment venues, and the top deck observation areas. I had a cabin on Deck 6. I'd memorized the layout within the first day because that's what I do. I build mental models of spaces, understand how systems work, create maps in my mind. By day 2, I could navigate the ship without looking at the directories. I knew where everything was, which is why I knew, absolutely and without question, that there was no Deck 13. The first 3 nights of the cruise were normal. I'm not much of a party person, so I'd usually have dinner, read for a while, then go to bed around 11 p.m. But on the 4th night, we were at sea between Cozumel and the Cayman Islands. I couldn't sleep. My cabin felt stuffy. The air conditioning wasn't quite right, and I had that restless energy that sometimes hits when your brain won't shut off. Around 1:30 a.m., I decided to go for a walk. I put on jeans and a t-shirt and left my cabin. The hallways were quiet, just the ever-present hum of the engines and the occasional crew member pushing a cleaning cart. I took the stairs up. I preferred stairs to elevators, liked the exercise and the rhythm of it. I went from deck 6 to deck 7, then deck 7 to deck 8. The buffet area was closed, chairs stacked on tables, everything dark except for emergency lighting. I kept going up. Deck 9, where the main pool was covered with tarps for the night. Deck 10, empty loungers in neat rows. Deck 11, the sports deck, basketball hoops, and shuffleboard courts silent in the darkness. Then I reached the stairs to deck 12. Except when I got there was another flight of stairs continuing upward. Not the stairs to deck 12, stairs beyond deck 12, stairs that shouldn't exist. I stopped, confused. I'd been up to deck 12 during the day. It was the top deck, open air, with the observation area and some VIP cabins. There were no stairs beyond it. The ship simply ended at deck 12. But these stairs were here, solid, real, identical to all the other stairwells in the ship. Brushed metal railings, non-slip steps, the same cream-colored walls. And at the top, a sticker with a sign that read Deck 13. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes trying to logic my way through it. Had I miscounted? Was I actually looking at the stairs to deck 12 and I'd somehow gotten turned around? I pulled out my phone and opened the ship's app, which had a map function. According to the app, I was on deck 11. The stairs I was looking at led to deck 12. There was no mention of deck 13, but the sign clearly said deck 13. I'm a curious person by nature. My entire job is investigating anomalies, debugging code, finding where systems break down. So despite a growing sense of unease, I climbed the stairs to deck 13. The door at the top was identical to every other deck access door on the ship. I pushed it open and stepped through. The hallway beyond was wrong immediately. Not dramatically wrong. It looked almost exactly like the hallways on the other decks. Same carpet, same lighting, same cream walls with decorative panels. But the proportions were off. The hallway felt narrower, or maybe the ceiling was slightly lower, and it was absolutely silent. On every other deck, you could hear the constant background noise of the ship, engines, ventilation, the subtle creaks and groans of metal on water. Here, there was nothing. Complete dead silence. I walked forward slowly. Cabin doors lined both sides of the hallway, numbered just like on the other decks. 13,001, 13,002, 13,003. The numbers were correct, following the same system the ship used everywhere else, but the doors felt wrong. Too flush with the walls, too perfectly aligned, like a 3D rendering of a hallway rather than an actual physical space. I tried the handle of 13,001, locked. 13,002, also locked. I walked the length of the hallway, maybe 100 feet, trying every door, all locked. At the end of the hallway was a perpendicular corridor, stretching left and right. I went right, following the curve of what should be the ship's exterior. More cabin doors, more perfect, too perfect silence. I pulled out my phone to take a photo, document this impossible deck. But my phone's camera wouldn't work. I'd open the app and it would immediately crash. I tried the video function. Same result. My phone was working fine otherwise. I could see the time, access other apps. But anything that tried to capture images of Deck 13 simply failed. That's when I started to feel genuinely frightened. The wrongness of this place was seeping into me, making my skin crawl. The silence was oppressive, pressing against my eardrums like I was deep underwater. And the air had a strange quality to it, not quite stale but flat, like it had been perfectly filtered of any scent or particulate matter. I decided to leave. I backtracked to where I'd entered, but when I reached the spot where the stairwell should be, it wasn't there. Instead, there was just more hallway, more cabin doors, extending in both directions. I checked my phone's compass. According to it, I was facing north. I'd been facing north when I entered. This should be the right location, but there was no door, no stairs, no exit. I walked back the way I'd come, trying to build a mental map. The hallway curved gently, following the ship's shape, presumably, and every 30 feet or so, there was an intersecting corridor. I picked one and followed it, thinking it might lead to a central area, an elevator bank, something. It just led to more hallways, more cabin doors, more silence. I tried the doors again, more desperately now, all locked. I started knocking, then pounding, calling out for help. My voice sounded dead in that silence, like it was being absorbed before it could travel more than a few feet. No one answered. No one came. I checked my phone. It was 2:03 a.m. I'd been on deck 13 for 16 minutes. The ship's Wi-Fi still worked. I could see the network, but when I tried to access it, I couldn't connect. My texts wouldn't send. Calls wouldn't go through. I was completely isolated. I forced myself to calm down and think logically. This was a cruise ship. It had a finite size and structure. Even if Deck 13 was some kind of construction anomaly, some hidden maintenance level that wasn't on the public maps, it still had to connect to the rest of the ship. There had to be stairs, elevators, emergency exits. I just needed to find them. I started walking systematically, turning right at every intersection, trying to map the space in my head. But the layout didn't make sense. I'd turn right 4 times, which should bring me back to where I started, and end up somewhere completely different. The hallways seemed to shift, rearrange themselves when I wasn't looking directly at them. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes, I found something different. A door that wasn't a cabin door. It was larger, double wide, with a small window set at eye level. Through the window, I could see what looked like a dining room. Tables set with white tablecloths, chairs neatly arranged, place settings laid out. Everything ready for service, but completely empty. I tried the door. It opened. The dining room was an exact replica of one of the ship's restaurants. I recognized the layout, the decoration, the style of the furniture. But like the hallways, it was too perfect. Every table was set identically. Every glass was positioned at the same angle. Every napkin folded in exactly the same way. It looked like a showroom, a display, rather than a functional space. And it was still absolutely silent. My footsteps on the carpet made no sound. When I pulled out a chair, it didn't scrape or creak. I picked up a glass and tapped it with my fingernail. No ring, no clink, just dead, absorbed sound. On the far side of the dining room was another door. I went through it and found a kitchen, industrial, spotless, equipped with all the same appliances and stations as the ship's real kitchens, but empty. No food, no supplies, no signs that anyone had ever cooked here. The stainless steel surfaces were absolutely pristine, reflecting the overhead lights in perfect parallel lines. Beyond the kitchen was a service corridor. I followed it, hoping it would lead to a service elevator, a stairwell, something. It curved and branched, and I took every turn, following a pattern, trying not to get lost. I found more empty rooms. A bar with bottles that were all identical, labels turned at the same angle. A spa with massage tables arranged in perfect rows. A theater with seats that all faced forward with geometric precision. Every space was a replica of something that existed on the real decks of the MSC Divina. But everything was empty, unused, silent. Like a simulation of a cruise ship rather than an actual cruise ship. Like someone had built a perfect model based on blueprints, but had never understood how these spaces were supposed to be used by actual humans. I checked my phone again. 2:27 a.m. I'd been trapped on Deck 13 for 40 minutes. My battery was at 67%, draining faster than it should. I was starting to panic, my breath coming faster, my hands shaking. The silence was crushing me, making it hard to think. I ran, just picked a direction and ran, throwing open doors, racing through empty, perfect rooms, trying to find anything that was different, anything that could show me a way out. I burst through a door and found myself in a hallway that looked familiar. I'd been here before. I was going in circles. I stopped, forcing myself to breathe, to think. In my job, when code breaks, when a system doesn't work the way it should, you don't panic. You go back to fundamentals. You look for the point where things diverged from expected behavior. The point of divergence was the stairwell. I'd entered via stairs from deck 11 to deck 13. Logic suggested that those stairs still existed, even if I couldn't find them. They had to be somewhere on this deck. I just needed to approach the problem differently. I opened my phone's compass and notes app. I started walking in one direction, north according to the compass, and I counted my steps. After every 50 steps, I turned right 90 degrees and marked it in my notes. I was going to map this impossible space, force it to make sense, find the pattern. 25 steps north, turn right. 50 steps east, turn right. 75 steps south, turn right. The numbers didn't match. The space was bigger than it should be, or the distances changed, or I was moving through some kind of non-Euclidean geometry that my brain couldn't properly process. But after the 6th iteration of this pattern, something changed. I turned right, and instead of another hallway, I saw a door I recognized. A stairwell door, with a small window showing stairs beyond. I ran to it and yanked it open. The stairs were there, going down. I practically threw myself onto them, descending as fast as I could. The door above me said, Deck 13. The landing below said, Deck 11. I burst through the Deck 11 door and stumbled into the normal hallway, the real hallway, where I could hear the engines and the ventilation and the normal sounds of the ship. A crew member was walking past with a clipboard. She looked startled when I appeared. "Sir, are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice shaking. "What time is it?" She checked her watch. 2:27 a.m. "Is everything okay?" 2:27 a.m. The same time my phone had shown when I was on Deck 13. No time had passed, or all the time had passed in a weird loop, or time worked differently there. I didn't know. "I'm fine," I repeated. "Just couldn't sleep." She nodded and continued on her way. I went back to my cabin, locked the door, and sat on my bed trying to process what had happened. The next morning, I went to the information desk. "How many decks does this ship have?" I asked. The woman at the desk smiled. 12 decks, sir. Would you like a map?" "Does Deck 13 exist? Like, maybe it's a service level or something not on the public maps." Her smile faltered slightly. "No, sir. The ship has 12 decks. There's no Deck 13. Many ships skip that number. It's considered unlucky. But if someone found stairs to a Deck 13, what would that be?" She looked uncomfortable now. "Sir, I can assure you there is no Deck 13 on this vessel. If you've seen something unusual, I can have someone from security speak with you." I declined. I spent the rest of the day trying to find the stairwell again. I went to every stairwell on the ship, climbed to Deck 11, looked for stairs continuing beyond Deck 12. They weren't there. Every stairwell ended at Deck 12, exactly as they should. That night, I couldn't sleep again. At 1:45 a.m., I went back to the stairwell where I'd found the access to Deck 13. I climbed to Deck 11, then looked up. There were stairs continuing up, stairs that hadn't been there during the day, stairs leading to a door marked Deck 13. I didn't go up. I stood there for 5 minutes, staring at that impossible door, trying to decide if I was brave enough, or curious enough, or stupid enough to go back. I wasn't. I went back to my cabin and didn't leave until morning. For the rest of the cruise, I avoided that stairwell. I used different routes, different paths through the ship, but every night between 1:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. I'd check the other stairwells, and in 3 of them, at seemingly random times within that window, I'd see the stairs to Deck 13 appear. On the last night of the cruise, I saw someone else go up those stairs. A passenger, a woman maybe in her 50s, wearing a robe and slippers. She climbed past Deck 12 and went through the door to Deck 13. I waited for 20 minutes to see if she'd come back. She didn't. I reported it to security the next morning. "A passenger went into a restricted area last night, Deck 13. The security officer looked at me with concern. "Sir, there is no Deck 13 on this ship." "I saw her go up there. Around 2 a.m. He checked his computer. All passengers are accounted for, sir. No. One has reported missing. Is there anything else I can help you with? I've been home for 7 months now. I've researched the MSC Divina extensively. It's a real ship built in 2012. 139,400 gross tons, 12 decks. There is no 13th deck. There has never been a 13th deck. The ship's blueprints, freely available online, show 12 decks and nothing more. But I was there. I spent 40 minutes walking through an impossible space that shouldn't exist. And somewhere, on some cruise ships, between certain hours of the night, stairs appear that lead to places that aren't on any map. I don't know if it's the ships themselves, some flaw in their construction that creates pockets of space that shouldn't be there, or if it's the ocean, something about the endless water that creates thin spots in reality, or if it's something else entirely, something I don't have the framework to understand. All I know is that Deck 13 exists, even though it doesn't, and I got out, even though I'm not sure how, and somewhere on the MSC Divina, a woman in a robe and slippers is still walking those silent, perfect hallways, trying to find her way back to a ship that doesn't have the deck she's trapped on. I'll never take another cruise, and I'll never trust that the world works the way we think it does. Because I've been to the place between decks, the space that exists in architectural drawings, but not in reality, or maybe exists in reality, but not in any rational understanding of space and structure. And I know now that you can get lost in impossible places and no one will believe you, and the maps will insist you were never there at all. A woman I'd never seen before told me not to go to the pool deck at 11:37 p.m. She saved my life, but according to the cruise line, she doesn't exist. My name is Malka, and I'm a high school history teacher from Chicago. I'm 52 years old. I've been divorced for 3 years, and I decided to treat myself to a Cunard transatlantic crossing from New York to Southampton in October 2024. 11 days at sea, the Queen Mary 2, traveling the same route the great ocean liners used to take. It felt historic, romantic, like stepping back into a more elegant time. I'm a rational person. I teach the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, the age of reason. I believe in evidence, documentation, primary sources. So what I'm about to tell you goes against everything I've spent my career teaching students to trust. But it happened. And I have just enough proof to make me question everything I thought I knew about how the world works. It was day 5 of the crossing. We'd left New York on a Tuesday, and by Saturday we were in the middle of the Atlantic, that vast stretch where you don't see land or other ships for days. Just endless gray water under an endless gray sky. Beautiful in its own way, but also isolating. You really feel how alone you are out there, how dependent on the ship, how far from any help if something goes wrong. I'd settled into a routine, breakfast in the King's Court buffet, morning lecture in the Royal Court Theatre. They had historians and authors giving talks, which was heaven for someone like me. Lunch, reading in the library, afternoon tea in the Queen's Room, dinner in the Britannia restaurant, followed by the evening show or sometimes just a walk on the deck before bed. That Saturday, I'd had a particularly good day. The morning lecture was about the original Queen Mary and the transatlantic crossings of the 1930s. I'd met some interesting people at lunch, a retired couple from Boston, a young woman traveling solo like me who was a marine biologist. I felt content, happy even, in a way I hadn't felt since before my divorce. After the evening show, a tribute to Ella Fitzgerald, I went to the Corinthia Lounge for a nightcap. Just one glass of wine, nothing heavy. I was sitting alone at a table by the window, watching the dark ocean slide past, when a woman approached my table. She was in her mid-30s, maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore what looked like a crew uniform, the standard white shirt and black trousers that the restaurant and service staff wore, with a name tag I couldn't quite read in the dim lighting. But something about her seemed off. Her uniform was slightly wrong. The shirt was a different shade of white, almost ivory, and it had buttons where the regular crew uniforms had a hidden placket. "Excuse me," she said quietly, leaning close. Her accent was European, maybe Eastern European, but I couldn't place it exactly. "I need to tell you something important." I assumed she was going to tell me about a schedule change or a safety issue. "Yes." She glanced around, as if checking whether anyone was watching us. Then she looked directly at me with the most intense eyes I'd ever seen. Dark brown, almost black, and filled with what looked like urgency or fear. "Don't go to the pool deck tonight. Specifically, don't be anywhere near the pavilion pool at 11:37 p.m. I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" 11:37 p.m., the pool deck. Don't go there. Don't be anywhere near it." She spoke with absolute certainty, as if this was a matter of life and death. "Why? What's going to happen?" Her expression became more agitated. "Please, just trust me. Stay in your cabin or stay in the public rooms, but do not go to the pool deck between 11:30 and midnight." Before I could ask anything else, she turned and walked quickly away, disappearing into the corridor that led toward the crew areas. I sat there, my wine forgotten, trying to process what had just happened. It was odd enough that I considered reporting it to someone. But report what? A crew member gave me a strange warning. They'd probably think I'd had too much to drink or misunderstood something. And besides, what harm was there in avoiding the pool deck for half an hour? I went back to my cabin on deck 7. It was 10:45 p.m. I changed into my pajamas, made a cup of tea with the electric kettle in my room, and tried to read. But I couldn't concentrate. The warning kept replaying in my mind. The woman's urgent tone, the specific time, 11:37 p.m. Not 11:30 or 11:45, but exactly 11:37. At 11:25 p.m., I found myself getting dressed again. Jeans, sweater, jacket. I told myself I was just going to check, see if anything unusual was happening, satisfy my curiosity, then come back to my cabin. I was a historian after all. We investigate things. We look for evidence. I took the elevator up to deck 12, where the pavilion pool was located. The outdoor pools were covered this time of year. The Atlantic in October is too cold for swimming, but the area was still accessible, with deck chairs and the bar that served drinks during the day. When I stepped outside at 11:29 p.m., there were a few other passengers on the deck, a couple smoking cigarettes by the railing, talking quietly, a man jogging in place, getting his evening exercise. Everything seemed completely normal. I found a spot near the covered pool, partially sheltered from the wind, and I waited. I felt ridiculous. A 52-year-old woman standing on a ship's deck because a crew member gave her a cryptic warning. But something kept me there. Some instinct I couldn't name. At 11:34 p.m., the couple finished their cigarettes and went inside. The jogger left a minute later. I was alone on the deck now, just the sound of the wind and the distant throb of the engines and the endless rush of water along the hull. At 11:36 p.m., I felt it. A change in the ship's movement. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle shift in the rhythm. The Queen Mary II is massive, over 150,000 tons, so you don't usually feel much motion even in rough seas. But something changed. The deck tilted slightly, maybe a degree or two to starboard, then back to level. At 11:37 p.m. exactly, according to my watch, a wave hit. Not from ahead or behind, where you'd expect waves to come from the side, from starboard. A massive wave, maybe 20 or 30 feet high, that came out of nowhere and slammed into the ship. The sound was like an explosion. Water crashed over the starboard railing, flooding across the deck with tremendous force. If I'd been standing where that couple had been smoking, where I'd initially planned to wait, I would have been swept off my feet, possibly overboard. As it was, I was far enough back, sheltered by the pool structure, that I only got splashed. But I watched in horror as deck chairs were thrown around like toys, smashing against the pool structure and the walls. The railing where that couple had been standing bent under the force of the water. For a moment, just a moment, I saw water pouring across the deck in a solid sheet, and I understood that if I'd been in that water's path, I'd be dead. The wave subsided. Water drained through the scuppers. The deck tilted back to level, and everything went quiet again, except for the alarms that started blaring from somewhere inside the ship. I stood there, soaked and shaking, staring at the bent railing and the scattered furniture. Within minutes, crew members appeared, real crew members, in proper uniforms, with radios and flashlights. They were checking the damage, securing the area, asking if I was hurt. "What happened?" I asked one of them, a young officer with a British accent. "Rogue wave, ma'am. Came out of nowhere." "Are you injured?" "No, I'm fine, but if I'd been over there—" I pointed to the starboard railing. His expression darkened. "You'd probably have gone overboard. Very lucky you were where you were. We're going to have to ask you to go inside now. This deck is closed until we can assess the damage." They escorted me inside and took my statement. A steward brought me hot tea and a blanket. A ship's officer asked me questions. Where exactly I'd been standing, what I'd seen, whether I'd noticed anything unusual before the wave hit. I told them everything except the warning. I didn't mention the crew member, who told me to avoid the pool deck. I don't know why. Maybe I thought they wouldn't believe me. Maybe I wanted to talk to her first, understand what she'd known, and how she'd known it. The next morning, there was an announcement from the captain. A rogue wave had struck the ship at 11:37 p.m., causing minor damage to the Deck 12 pool area. No passengers were injured. The deck would remain closed for repairs. He explained that rogue waves are rare, but documented phenomena. Waves that are more than twice the size of surrounding waves, appearing suddenly in otherwise calm seas. They're dangerous and unpredictable, though modern ships are built to withstand them. What he didn't say, but what I later learned from other passengers who'd been talking to crew members, was that they'd seen the wave on radar only seconds before it hit. Not enough time to warn anyone. Not enough time to do anything except brace for impact. But someone had warned me. 43 minutes before it happened, a crew member had told me not to be on that deck at exactly the moment the wave would hit. I spent the rest of the day trying to find her. I went to guest services. "I'd like to thank one of your crew members," I said. "She helped me last night, but I didn't get her name. She was working in the Corinthia Lounge around 10:15 p.m. The woman at the desk pulled up the staff schedules. "Let me see who was assigned there. Can you describe her?" "Mid-30s, dark hair in a bun, Eastern European accent. She was wearing the restaurant staff uniform." The woman frowned at her screen. "We had 2 servers assigned to that lounge last night, Michael Chen and Patricia Rodriguez. Neither matches that description." "She was definitely there. She spoke to me." "Let me check if anyone else was covering or on break." She typed, scrolled, frowned. "No, ma'am. Only those 2. Perhaps you saw her elsewhere earlier and confused the location." "No, it was definitely the Corinthia Lounge. Maybe she was filling in for someone." "That would still be in the system. I'm not seeing anyone else logged for that location." I thanked her and left, but I didn't give up. Over the next few days, I made it a point to eat at different restaurants, attend different events, walk through different areas of the ship, always watching for the woman in the ivory uniform. I never saw her again. On the second to last day of the crossing, I was in the library when I struck up a conversation with an older gentleman who said he'd done this crossing 14 times. "Do you know anything about rogue waves on this route?" I asked him. "They're rare," he said, "but they happen. I've been through one before, actually. About 6 years ago, on a different ship, hit us at night, caused quite a bit of damage." "Did anyone get hurt?" His expression became somber. "One passenger. She was on the deck when it hit. Swept overboard. They never found her." My blood went cold. "When did this happen? What date?" He thought about it. "October, I think. Late October. 2018. October. The same month as my crossing." "Do you remember anything else about it? Time of day, specific date?" "It was late evening. 11:30 or 11:40 p.m., something like that. Why do you ask? Because the wave that hit us had struck at 11:37 p.m. in October, in the same general location in the Atlantic. Just curious, I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to the ship's internet cafe and paid the exorbitant fee for Wi-Fi access. I started searching. Queen Mary Sound Rogue Wave 2018. Passenger overboard transatlantic 2018. Cunard accident October 2018. I found a brief mention in a maritime accident database. October 23, 2018. Queen Mary 2, day 6 of an 11-day transatlantic crossing. Rogue wave caused damage to deck 12. One passenger lost overboard and presumed dead. Name, Mariana Volkov. Age 34. Nationality, Romanian. Occupation, cruise ship crew member, on leave. Mariana Volkov had been a crew member. She'd been traveling as a passenger on her time off, using the crew discount that Cunard offers to maritime workers. She'd been on deck 12 at 11:37 p.m. when a rogue wave hit. She'd been swept overboard. Her body was never recovered. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The woman who'd warned me had been in her mid-30s. She'd had a European accent. She'd worn a crew uniform that was slightly wrong, slightly old-fashioned, like it was from a different era, or a different ship, or maybe like it was the uniform she died in. I looked for photos. It took me an hour of searching through various maritime worker memorial pages and social media, but I found one. A group photo from a crew gathering dated 2017. Second row, third from the left. Dark hair, dark eyes, serious expression. The caption listed names. Third from the left, Mariana Volkov. It was her. The woman who'd warned me. The woman who'd saved my life. The woman who died in the same spot, at the same time, 6 years earlier. I printed the photo at the internet cafe, paying another ridiculous fee, and I took it to guest services. This woman, I said, pointing to Mariana. Was she ever crew on this ship? The woman at the desk looked at the photo. Her expression changed, became guarded. Where did you get this? Online. Was she crew here? I'd have to check with HR. May I ask why you're inquiring? Because I saw her. On this ship, 5 days ago. The woman's face went pale. She called over a manager. I repeated my story to him. The warning, the wave, my search for the woman, finding her photo online, discovering she died in 2018. The manager listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said carefully, Ms. Malka, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not the first passenger to report seeing Mariana. My skin prickled. What? Since her death, there have been several reports, always the same. Passengers describing a crew member who gave them warnings or helped them, who matches Mariana's description. We've investigated each time. We've checked security footage, crew rosters, everything. She's never on the cameras. She's never in the official records. But people see her. And the warnings, are they real? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Every passenger who's reported seeing her and receiving a warning avoided some kind of danger. A fall, a collision, a medical emergency. In your case, the rogue wave. We can't explain it. Officially, the cruise line doesn't acknowledge any of this. But those of us who work on the ship, we know. Why would she come back? Why would she warn people? I think, he said quietly, because she knows what it's like to not be warned, to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with no idea that danger is coming. Maybe she's trying to prevent that from happening to others. I disembarked in Southampton 2 days later. I've been home for 6 months now. I haven't told many people this story because it sounds insane. But I have the photo. I have the maritime accident report. I have the documentation of the rogue wave that hit at exactly the time she told me to avoid. And I have my life, which I wouldn't have if a dead woman hadn't warned me. I've researched transatlantic crossings since then. Rogue waves are documented phenomena, but they're unpredictable. There's no way to know when or where they'll appear. Meteorologists, oceanographers, ship captains, None of them can predict a rogue wave more than seconds before it hits. But Mariana knew. 43 minutes in advance, she knew exactly when and where a wave would strike. How? Because she'd been there? Because she died there? Because some part of her remained, trapped in that moment, reliving it over and over, and somewhere in that eternal loop she'd gained the ability to warn others. I don't know. I don't have answers. I just have the certainty that on October 27, 2024, at approximately 10:15 p.m., I had a conversation with a woman who died 6 years ago, and that conversation saved my life. Before I disembarked, I went to the ship's chapel. I'm not particularly religious, but I lit a candle for Mariana Volkov. I said thank you out loud, even though I felt silly doing it. And I whispered, I hope you're at peace. I'd like to think she is. I'd like to think that saving passengers like me gives her purpose, helps her rest easier, lets her move on from the moment she died. But part of me worries that she's trapped there, forever watching that deck, forever waiting for the wave that killed her, forever trying to prevent others from sharing her fate. The Queen Mary II still makes regular transatlantic crossings. Thousands of passengers sail on her every year. And according to the manager I spoke with, reports of Mariana continue. A crew member who appears to warn passengers, then vanishes. A woman in an ivory uniform who shouldn't exist. She's still there, still watching, still warning. And if you ever take a Cunard transatlantic crossing, and a crew member you've never seen before approaches you with an urgent warning about a specific time and place, listen to her. She died trying to prevent what happened to her from happening to you. The least you can do is take her advice. We were supposed to dock in Juneau at 8 a.m., but the fog had other plans. What I saw in that fog still makes me question everything I thought I knew about what's possible in this world. My name is Kane, and I'm a wildlife photographer from Seattle. In June 2024, I booked a Holland America-Alaska cruise specifically to photograph glaciers, whales, and the stunning landscapes of the Inside Passage. I'd saved for 2 years to afford this trip. It was supposed to be the journey that would define my portfolio, launch my career from amateur to professional. The ship was the MS Koningsdam, and for the first 5 days, everything exceeded my expectations. I photographed breaching humpbacks near Ketchikan, captured sunrise over Glacier Bay, got close-ups of bald eagles in Skagway. My camera was never out of my hands. I was living my dream. On day 6, we were supposed to arrive in Juneau at dawn. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. so I could be on deck with my camera ready as we approached. Alaska in June means the sun rises around 4:30 a.m., so I'd have perfect light for photographing the harbor and mountains. But when I woke up and looked out my balcony door on deck 6, all I could see was white. Dense, impenetrable fog surrounded the ship. Not the wispy morning mist you sometimes get. This was a wall of fog so thick it looked solid. I couldn't see the water. I couldn't see the sky. I couldn't see anything beyond about 10 feet from my balcony railing. I got dressed and went up to deck 8, where the observation areas offered better vantage points. Other early risers were already there, all of us staring into the fog. The ship was barely moving. I could feel we'd slowed to maybe 5 knots. A crew member was standing near the railing, and I asked him what was happening. "Captain's waiting for the fog to clear before we enter the harbor," he said. "Should burn off once the sun gets higher." "Is this normal?" He hesitated. "Not this thick. I've been running this route for 8 years, and I've seen fog, but nothing like this. It came in about an hour ago, just swallowed us up." I decided to make the best of it. Fog creates interesting photographic opportunities. The way it diffuses light, obscures familiar shapes, creates atmosphere. I set up my tripod and started shooting long exposures, playing with the white emptiness. That's when I saw the first figure. At first, I thought it was another passenger on a lower deck. Just a dark shape in the fog, standing near the railing. But it was on deck 4, and I could see from the windows that the public areas were closed at this hour. No one should be standing on that deck. I adjusted my telephoto lens and looked again. The figure was still there. A person-shaped shadow in the fog, completely motionless. I took a photo, more for documentation than art. When I looked back with my naked eye, the figure was gone. Over the next 20 minutes, I saw more of them. Always on lower decks or at a distance, always standing perfectly. Still, always vanishing when I looked away and back. Shapes that could be people, standing on the water itself, just beyond the ship. I wasn't the only one seeing them. The woman next to me, an older passenger with expensive-looking binoculars, said quietly, "Are those people in the water?" "I don't think so," I replied, though I wasn't sure. "They look like they're standing on the surface." More passengers had gathered now, maybe 20 of us on deck 8, all staring into the fog. The figures were becoming more visible as our eyes adjusted. Not clearer. They remained shadowy, indistinct, but more numerous. Dozens of them, surrounding the ship at various distances, all standing motionless in or on the fog. Someone called for a crew member. A young officer came over, and we pointed out the figures. He pulled out a radio and spoke in Dutch to someone, then switched to English. "The captain is aware. We're conducting radar sweeps. There's nothing out there." "We can see them," another passenger insisted. "I understand, but our instruments show no vessels, no objects, nothing but open water and fog. Please remain calm." Remain calm. But how do you remain calm when you're surrounded by dozens of shadow figures standing impossibly on the surface of the ocean? I kept taking photos. My professional instincts kicked in. Document everything. Worry about what it means later. I shot wide angles showing the ship and the surrounding fog. I shot close-ups of individual figures. I adjusted exposure, played with ISO settings, tried everything I knew to capture what we were seeing. At 6:47 a.m., according to my camera's timestamp, something changed. The figures began to move. Not walking, moving, gliding across the water toward the ship. Still silent, still shadowy, but definitely approaching. The passengers around me started backing away from the railing. Someone was praying in Spanish. A couple clutched each other. I kept shooting, my hands surprisingly steady despite the fear coursing through me. The figures reached the hull. I could hear them now. Not footsteps exactly, but a wet, dragging sound, like cloth soaked in water being pulled across metal. They were climbing up the side of the ship. I ran to the starboard railing and looked down. The fog made it hard to see, but I could make out shapes on the hull, ascending toward where we stood. Dark, person-shaped shadows moving up vertical metal, as if gravity didn't apply to them. "Everyone inside." A senior officer had appeared, along with security personnel. "All passengers, please return to your cabins or move to interior spaces immediately." Most people ran, but I couldn't. I was a photographer. This was impossible, terrifying, potentially dangerous, and I needed to document it. I moved back from the railing but stayed on deck, camera raised. The first figure reached deck 7, then deck 8. It pulled itself over the railing with movements that were wrong, too fluid, boneless. It stood there, facing us, facing me, and I could see it wasn't quite solid. More like dense fog shaped into human form with darker spots where eyes and mouth should be. I took the photo. The shutter sound seemed impossibly loud in the eerie silence. More figures were climbing aboard now, 6 on deck 8, more on lower decks. They stood at the railings, these fog people, these impossibilities, and they just watched us. The few remaining passengers screamed and fled. The security officers backed away, hands on their radios, clearly out of their depth. I stood there alone with my camera and these things that shouldn't exist. One of them moved toward me, not threateningly, but deliberately, closing the distance between us. I could feel cold radiating from it, a bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. It stopped about 5 feet away. We regarded each other. It had the rough shape of a man, maybe 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered. The dark spots where eyes should be seemed to look right through my lens, right through me. I lowered my camera slowly. "What are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But it raised one arm, if you could call that shifting mass of fog an arm, and pointed. I looked where it pointed, overboard, into the fog. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then the fog seemed to thin slightly and I saw them. Hundreds of figures, maybe thousands, standing on the water as far as the fog allowed me to see. An army of shadows, an ocean of the impossible, surrounding us completely. Then I understood. They weren't climbing aboard to attack us. They were warning us, or showing us, or maybe just making themselves known, letting us see what exists in the fog, what stands on the water, when visibility drops to nothing. The figure in front of me lowered its arm. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, all the figures on deck turned and moved back to the railings. They didn't climb down. They simply dissolved, breaking apart into wisps of fog that dispersed into the surrounding whiteness. Within seconds, they were gone. The deck was empty except for me and two security officers who'd watched the whole thing from a doorway, too shocked to move. At 7:23 a.m., the fog began to clear, not gradually, but in minutes, rolling back as if being pulled away by an invisible force. By 7:30, we had clear visibility. Blue sky, calm water, mountains in the distance. The fog was completely gone. We docked in Juneau at 8:47 a.m., 50 minutes late. I went straight to my cabin and reviewed my photos. I had over 200 images from that morning. The fog was there in every shot. The shadowy figures were there, dozens of them, captured in digital clarity. You could see them standing on the water, climbing the hull, standing on deck. The photos proved I hadn't hallucinated. Or they should have proved it. Because when I tried to transfer the photos to my laptop, something went wrong. The files were corrupted. Every single image from that morning showed nothing but gray static, as if they'd been deliberately erased. I spent hours trying to recover them. I used every data recovery tool I knew. I even paid a tech specialist in Juneau to look at my memory card. Nothing. The photos existed. I could see the file sizes, the timestamps, but the image data was gone, replaced by meaningless noise. The only exception was one photo. The very first one I'd taken. The long exposure of the fog before I'd seen any figures. That image was perfect, unblemished. Everything after that was destroyed. I wasn't the only witness. 20 passengers and several crew members had seen the figures. But when I tried to talk to other passengers about it, most didn't want to discuss it. They'd convinced themselves it was mass hysteria, tricks of light in the fog, mistaken perception. One couple I'd been friendly with earlier in the cruise actually denied seeing anything unusual. Just fog, they insisted, even though I'd been standing next to them when they'd pointed out the figures on the water. The crew was even less forthcoming. The officer who'd told us to go inside refused to discuss it when I approached him later. "I have no information about any incident," he said stiffly. "Please enjoy the rest of your cruise." But I found one person who would talk. A deckhand named Shmuel, maybe in his 60s, who'd worked on Alaska cruise ships for over 30 years. I cornered him in one of the crew-accessible corridors after following him from a public area. "I saw them too," I said. "The figures in the fog. I know they were real." He looked around nervously, then pulled me into a storage room. "You shouldn't talk about this," he said. "The company doesn't like it." "But you've seen them before, haven't you?" He hesitated, then nodded. 3 times. Always in fog this thick. Always in waters near Juneau or Glacier Bay. There are stories, native stories, older than the cruise ships, older than any European settlement. The Tlingit people talk about spirits that live in the fog, souls that never left the water. Are they dangerous? I don't think so. They've never hurt anyone, not that I know of. But they show themselves sometimes, when the fog is thick enough. Maybe they're just making sure we know they're there, that we respect that this is their territory, not ours. Why do the photos corrupt? Why can't we document them? Shmuel shrugged. Maybe they don't want to be documented. Maybe our technology can't capture what they are. Or maybe, he met my eyes, they do it to protect themselves. Because if there was proof, real proof, what would happen? Ships would stop coming, or people would come hunting for them, trying to study them, capture them. Maybe it's better this way. Those who see them know. Those who don't won't believe anyway. I spent the rest of the cruise trying to make sense of it. I interviewed every passenger I could find who'd been on Deck 8 that morning. Most wouldn't talk, but a few shared whispered accounts that matched mine. The figures, the climbing, the pointing, the sudden departure when the fog cleared. On the last day, I found a woman who'd taken video with her phone. She showed it to me in secret. The video was corrupted too, but in a different way. Instead of static, it showed the fog and the deck. But where the figures should have been, there were just dark blurs, moving shapes that the camera couldn't quite resolve. You could tell something was there, but you couldn't see what. I've tried to convince myself it was a hoax, she said. Some kind of hologram or projection. But deep down, I know what I saw. They were real. They were there. I've been home for 4 months now. I've researched everything I could find about fog, optical illusions, mass hallucinations. None of it explains what we saw. Optical illusions don't climb ships. Mass hallucinations don't corrupt digital photos in identical ways across multiple devices. I've also researched the Tlingit stories Shmuel mentioned. There are legends about fog walkers, spirits that appear in the mist near glaciers and deep water, beings that exist between the physical and spiritual worlds, that can take shape from the fog itself when conditions are right. Those who see them are changed, the stories say. Not harmed, but changed. Made aware that the world is bigger and stranger than what we can photograph or measure or prove. I believe that now. I saw them. 20 other people saw them. They were real, regardless of what my corrupted photos say or don't say. Sometimes, late at night, I dream about that fog. I dream I'm standing on the deck again, camera raised, and the figures are climbing toward me. But in the dreams, I can see their faces. Not human faces. Something else. Something ancient and patient and vast. And in the dreams, they're not climbing onto the ship. They're inviting me to climb down, to join them in the fog, to stand on the water with them and see what they see, know what they know. I always wake up before I accept the invitation. But one day, maybe I won't wake up. Maybe I'll step over that railing and descend into the fog and finally understand what I photographed that morning in Alaskan waters. The fog that took my evidence but left me the memory. The fog that holds things our instruments can't detect and our eyes can barely see. The fog that reminds us, if we're paying attention, that some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. During the mandatory safety drill, I stood next to a family for 15 minutes, a mother, father, and their 2 young children. 3 hours later, I saw their faces on the missing persons board in the ship's atrium, and I learned they'd disappeared from this exact cruise 3 weeks earlier. My name is Bailey, and I'm a paralegal from Miami. I'm 28 years old, detail-oriented to a fault, which is probably why I'm good at my job. I notice things. I remember faces, conversations, small details that most people forget within minutes. It's a skill that served me well professionally. But after what happened on the celebrity eclipse in August 2024, I wish I could forget. I wish I had the kind of brain that doesn't hold on to every detail, because some details are too heavy to carry. The cruise was a last-minute booking. My boyfriend had broken up with me 3 weeks before we were supposed to go together, and I decided to go anyway. Solo travel, everyone said. It'll be empowering. It'll help you heal. It'll give you perspective. So there I was, boarding alone in Fort Lauderdale for a 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise, telling myself this was an adventure and not just a very expensive way to eat my feelings. The mandatory muster drill was scheduled for 4:30 p.m., right after embarkation. If you've ever been on a cruise, you know the drill, literally. All passengers have to attend. They take attendance, show you where your life jackets are and how to put them on, explain the emergency procedures. It's boring but necessary, and everyone treats it like an inconvenience between boarding and their first cocktail. My muster station was on Deck 4, Station 3B. I found my spot and stood there with about 60 other passengers, all of us wearing our life jackets looking vaguely ridiculous. The crew member in charge, a young woman named Dior according to her name tag, was checking people off on her tablet as they arrived. The family showed up about 2 minutes after I did. The father was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair graying at the temples, mid-40s, wearing khaki shorts and a blue polo shirt. The mother was shorter, blonde, pretty, probably late 30s, wearing a sundress. The 2 kids were girls, maybe 7 and 9 years old, both wearing matching pink Disney shirts and looking bored already. They stood directly next to me in the lineup. The older daughter was complaining about having to wear the life jacket. "It's so uncomfortable," she whined. Her mother smiled apologetically at me. "Sorry about the noise," she said. "They're not thrilled about safety protocols." "It's fine," I said. "I remember hating these drills when I was a kid too." We chatted a bit. Small talk, the kind you make with strangers in forced proximity. Their names were Rebecca and Michael Henderson. The kids were Emma and Sophie. They were from Charlotte, North Carolina. This was their first cruise. They'd saved up for 2 years to afford it. "We almost didn't come," Rebecca said. "Michael's father passed away 3 months ago, and we weren't sure it was the right time. But his mother insisted. Said her husband would have wanted us to go, to make happy memories with the girls." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. Michael nodded. "Thanks. But she's right. Dad always said life's too short to put off happiness. So here we are." Emma, the younger daughter, tugged on her father's hand. "Daddy, how long is this going to take?" "Not long, sweetheart. Then we can go get ice cream." The drill lasted about 15 minutes. The crew member explained emergency procedures, demonstrated the life jacket, had us practice the emergency signal. The Hendersons stood next to me the entire time. I remember specific details because that's what my brain does. Rebecca had a small scar on her left shoulder, just visible above her sundress. Michael wore a wedding ring with an inscription I couldn't quite read. Emma had a purple scrunchie holding her ponytail. Sophie had a temporary tattoo of a unicorn on her right forearm. When the drill ended, Rebecca smiled at me. "Well, that wasn't too painful. See you around the ship." "Definitely," I said. They walked away, the girls running ahead while Rebecca and Michael held hands behind them. I watched them go, thinking they looked like the perfect family, the kind of family you see in cruise line advertisements. I didn't see them again, not that day, not the next. But on day 3 of the cruise, I was walking through the main atrium when I noticed a new addition to the wall near guest services. A bulletin board labeled "Missing Persons. Please contact staff if you have information." 3 faces were pinned there. A middle-aged man, name given as Thomas Waverly, missing since June. An elderly woman, Martha Grant, missing since May. And a family photo that made my blood freeze in my veins. Michael, Rebecca, Emma, and Sophie Henderson. The same faces. The same people I'd stood next to during the muster drill. According to the poster, they'd boarded the Celebrity Eclipse for a 7-day Caribbean cruise, departing Fort Lauderdale on July 19, 2024. 3 weeks before my cruise. They'd been seen the first day but never attended any meals, events, or activities after that first evening. Their cabin had been found empty on day 2. Security footage showed them entering their cabin on the first night, but never leaving. A comprehensive search of the ship found no trace of them. I stood there, staring at that poster for a long time, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Then I went directly to guest services. "I need to speak to someone about the Henderson family," I said to the woman at the desk. "The missing passengers." Her expression became guarded. Do you have information about their disappearance? I saw them 3 days ago during the muster drill. I stood next to them. We talked. She called a manager. The manager called security. Within 10 minutes, I was in a private office with 2 security officers and the ship's staff captain explaining what I'd experienced. You're certain it was them? The staff captain asked, showing me the poster again. Absolutely certain. I stood next to them for 15 minutes. We had a conversation. The mother told me about her father-in-law passing away, how they almost didn't come on the cruise. The daughter, Emma, was wearing a purple scrunchie. The security officers exchanged glances. Ms. Bailey, we need to review the drill footage. They pulled up security camera footage from the muster drill at Station 3B. I watched myself arrive, find my spot, stand there waiting. Then they fast-forwarded to when the Henderson family should have arrived. On the footage, I was standing alone. No family next to me. I watched myself appear to turn toward empty space. Watched my mouth move as if speaking to someone. Watched me smile and nod at nothing. For 15 minutes, I interacted with people who weren't there. That's impossible, I whispered. They were right there. I touched the mother's arm when I complimented her dress. The father handed me his life jacket for a second to help adjust mine. They were solid, real, physical people. We believe you believe that, the staff captain said carefully. But the footage shows you were alone. Then the footage is wrong, or it's been edited, or the camera malfunctioned, or... Ms. Bailey, can you tell us exactly what the family was wearing? I described their clothes in detail. Blue polo for Michael, sundress with small yellow flowers for Rebecca, pink Disney shirts for both girls. The staff captain opened a file and pulled out photographs taken from the Henderson family's cabin when they'd first gone missing. Michael was wearing the blue polo. Rebecca was wearing that exact sundress. The girls were wearing those pink Disney shirts. How would you know what they were wearing on July 19th? The security officer asked. Unless you were on that cruise. I wasn't. I'm telling you, I saw them 3 days ago during my muster drill. The staff captain leaned back in his chair. Ms. Bailey, I'm going to share something with you that is not public information, and I need you to understand the sensitive nature of this. This is not the first report we've received about the Henderson family. My skin prickled. What do you mean? Since their disappearance, there have been 4 other passengers on subsequent cruises who've reported seeing them. All during the muster drill at Station 3B. All describing detailed conversations. All appearing on security footage to be talking to empty air. You're the 5th. The room felt too small suddenly. The air too thin. That's impossible. We don't know what's happening, the staff captain admitted. We've had paranormal investigators review the footage, the cabin, the entire area. We've had the ship blessed by 3 different religious officials. We've tried moving the muster station to a different location, but Station 3B is designated by maritime, law based on the ship's structure. We can't just change it. What happened to them? The real Hendersons? We don't know. They boarded, they went to their cabin that first night, and they were never seen again. We searched every inch of this ship. The Coast Guard investigated. The FBI investigated. There's no explanation, they simply vanished. Could they have gone overboard? All 4 of them, without being seen on any camera, without triggering any alarms? Extremely unlikely. And even if they had, why would 3 weeks later they appear during safety drills, talking to passengers, behaving as if they're on their cruise for the first time? I spent the next 2 days in my cabin trying to process this. The ship's doctor offered me medication for anxiety. The staff captain offered to move me to a different cabin, as if location mattered. I declined both. What I needed wasn't pills or a new room. What I needed was an explanation that made sense, and there wasn't one. On day 5, I forced myself to go to breakfast. I was sitting alone in the buffet, pushing scrambled eggs around my plate, when a little girl approached my table. She was maybe 9 years old, wearing a pink Disney shirt with a purple scrunchie in her hair. Sophie Henderson. I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly against my plate. Sophie smiled at me. "Hi, you're the lady from the life jacket thing, right?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. "Mom wanted me to thank you," Sophie continued. "She said you were really nice. We're going to get ice cream later. Do you want to come?" "Sophie," a woman's voice called from across the buffet. Rebecca Henderson was standing near the omelet station waving at her daughter. "Don't bother the nice lady while she's eating." "She's not bothering me," I managed to say, my voice barely audible. Sophie grinned and ran back to her family. I watched them, all four of them, solid and real and physically present, get food, sit down at a table on the far side of the buffet, eat breakfast like any normal family on any normal cruise. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and took photos. They came out perfectly clear. The Henderson family, eating pancakes and fruit, the girls giggling at something their father said, Rebecca wiping syrup off Emma's chin. I showed the photos to the security officer who'd interviewed me. He looked at them for a long time, then pulled up a live camera feed of the buffet. On the feed, the table where the Hendersons were sitting appeared empty. "They're there," I insisted. "Look, I took the photos 5 minutes ago. They're sitting right there." He showed me the footage. The table was empty, had been empty all morning. But in my photos, clear as day, the Henderson family smiled at the camera. The security officer forwarded the photos to his supervisor, then to the staff captain, then to someone higher up the corporate chain. Within an hour, I was asked to delete them. For the privacy of the affected parties, they said, and to prevent panic among other passengers. I refused. These were my photos, my proof that I wasn't crazy, that what I'd seen was real. They threatened to confiscate my phone. I told them I'd already backed up the photos to cloud storage. They couldn't stop me from keeping evidence. The cruise ended 2 days later. I disembarked with hundreds of other passengers, all of them talking about what a wonderful time they'd had, already planning their next cruise. I went home to Miami and immediately contacted the Henderson family's next of kin, information I obtained through some paralegal connections I probably shouldn't have used for personal matters. Michael Henderson's mother answered the phone. "Hello? Mrs. Henderson, my name is Bailey. I'm calling about your son and his family." There was a long pause, then quietly, "Have they been found?" "Not exactly, but I saw them. On the celebrity eclipse 10 days ago. They were at the muster drill, and later at breakfast. I have photos." Another pause. "Others have called me with similar stories. The cruise line says it's impossible. That security footage shows these people talking to empty air. But I know my son. I know my granddaughters. If 5 different people have seen them, described them accurately, had conversations with them, then they're there. Somehow, they're still on that ship." "Do you think they're dead?" I asked, then immediately regretted the bluntness. "I think they're trapped," she said. "I think something happened that first night, something the cruise line doesn't want to acknowledge or can't explain, and now they're stuck in some kind of loop, experiencing their cruise over and over, meeting new passengers who can see them even though the cameras can't." "What do I do with the photos?" "Keep them. Document everything. Because one day, someone is going to figure out what's happening on that ship, and when they do, they'll need evidence. They'll need people like you who saw my family and refused to pretend they didn't exist. I still have the photos. I've shown them to paranormal investigators who find them fascinating but can't explain them. I've shown them to skeptics who insist they're doctored or that I'm lying. I've uploaded them to forums dedicated to maritime mysteries where they've been analyzed frame by frame with no conclusive results. The celebrity eclipse still runs cruises. Station 3B still holds muster drills. And according to posts I've found online, passengers still report seeing the Henderson family. A family of 4, friendly and excited about their first cruise, who vanished 3 weeks before you boarded, and now exist in some space between present and past, real and unreal, alive and something else. I've tried to go on other cruises since then. I've booked them, paid for them, packed for them. but I can't make myself bored. Because every time I think about stepping onto a ship, I remember Rebecca Henderson's smile. I remember Emma's purple scrunchie. I remember Sophie running across the buffet to thank me for being nice to her family. And I wonder, if they're trapped, reliving their first day forever, do they know they're trapped? Do they experience the same muster drill, the same breakfast, the same conversations with an endless stream of new passengers? Or does each iteration feel like the first time, with no memory of the dozens of people before me who stood next to them at Station 3B, who made small talk, who promised to see them around the ship? I don't have answers. No one does. The Henderson family remains officially missing. Their disappearance is an open case with no leads, no theories that make sense, no evidence beyond security footage showing them enter a cabin and never leave. But I know they're there. On the Celebrity Eclipse at Station 3B, every time a new cruise begins and passengers gather for the mandatory safety drill. A family of 4 will arrive, wearing the same clothes they wore on July 19, 2024. They'll stand next to whoever happens to be in that spot. They'll make small talk. They'll complain about uncomfortable life jackets and look forward to ice cream afterward. And whoever stands next to them will remember every detail, because how could you forget meeting a family that seemed so normal, so real, so alive? It's only later, when you see their faces on the missing persons board, when you review security footage that shows you talking to empty air, when you realize you have photos that prove they were there, even though every camera on the ship says they weren't, that you'll understand. You didn't meet the Henderson family. You met what's left of them. An echo, a memory, a ghost of a first day that never got to become a second day. And they'll be there forever, welcoming new passengers, making friends, experiencing the joy of that first afternoon on their first cruise, over and over and over again, while somewhere, in a cabin that's been cleaned and rebooked dozens of times, the real Henderson family remains. Not dead, not alive, just gone, just missing, just trapped in whatever happened that first night when they closed their cabin door and never opened it again. I'd bought the unlimited photo package because I wanted every moment documented. What I didn't expect was for those photos to document someone who was always watching me, someone I never saw with my own eyes. My name is Osiris, and I'm a graphic designer from Toronto. I'm 34 years old, single, and in September 2024, I decided to treat myself to a 7-day cruise on Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas to the Western Caribbean. It was supposed to be a solo adventure, a chance to decompress after a brutal year of client deadlines and burnout. I'm good with visuals. I work with images every day, so I splurged on the unlimited photo package. I figured if I was going on this expensive trip alone, I at least wanted professional photos to remember it by. For those unfamiliar with cruise ship photography, it works like this. Professional photographers are stationed at various locations throughout the ship and at port excursions. They take your photo, you give them your cabin number, and later you can review and purchase the images from kiosks in the photo gallery. The unlimited package means you get all the photos they take, hundreds of them by the end of the cruise, for one flat fee. The first few days were exactly what I needed. I was actually relaxing for the first time in months. I posed for photos at dinner, in front of the ship's various installations, at the ports in Cozumel and Jamaica. The photographers were everywhere, and I played along. Cheesy thumbs up, fake casual lean against the railing, all of it. That's what you do on a cruise, right? Embrace the corniness. On day 4, I went to the photo gallery to review my pictures. There were already 87 photos of me uploaded to my account. I sat at one of the digital kiosks, scrolling through them, deciding which ones I wanted to save to my phone or order prints of. Most were exactly what I expected. Me in various locations, doing various tourist things. Then I got to photo number 34. It was taken on day 2, outside the main theater before an evening show. I was standing in front of the ornate entrance, wearing the black button-down shirt I'd bought specifically for this trip. The photo was well composed, properly lit, completely professional. And in the background, maybe 20 feet behind me, there was a man staring directly at the camera. Not just happening to be in the shot, staring at the camera with focused intensity. He was tall, maybe 6'3", wearing a dark suit that looked oddly formal for a cruise ship. His face was partially in shadow, but I could see his eyes clearly. They were fixed on the camera with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not threatening exactly, but not friendly either. Curious, maybe. Or calculating. I moved to the next photo, number 35, taken maybe 10 seconds later from a slightly different angle. The man was still there, now positioned differently, but still staring at the camera. Still watching. I went back through the previous photos. Photo 27 was taken at the pool deck that afternoon. There he was, standing near the bar, 30 feet away, looking at the camera. Photo 19, from the previous evening's formal night. In the background of my posed dinner photo, barely visible among other passengers, the same tall man in a dark suit, face turned toward the camera. I felt a creeping sense of unease. I scrolled faster, checking every photo. He was in 14 of them, always in the background, always watching the camera. Sometimes close, sometimes far away, but always there. Always that same intense stare. I went to the photo gallery desk. "Excuse me," I said to the woman working there. Her name tag said Arisbeth. "I have a question about some of my photos. There's someone in the background of a lot of them, and I wanted to know if you can edit him out." "Of course, we can do that for an additional fee. Let me see which photos you're referring to." I pulled up photo 34 on my phone, where I'd saved it. Showed her the man in the background. She looked at the photo for a long time. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sir, can you come with me for a moment?" She led me to a back office and called over a supervisor, a man named Yeshua. I showed him the photo. He examined it carefully, then pulled up my account on his computer. He went through all 87 photos, one by one. "How many photos would you say this person appears in?" Yeshua asked. 14, I counted. He nodded slowly. "Mr. Osiris, I'm going to be very direct with you. Do you see this person?" He pointed to the man in the background of photo 34. "Yes, obviously. That's why I'm asking about him." Yeshua and Arisbeth exchanged a glance. "Sir, there's no one there in our system. The photo shows you in front of the theater. Background passengers, yes, but no one matching the description of who you're pointing to." I stared at them. "Are you serious? He's right there. Tall man, dark suit, staring at the camera." "I believe that you see someone," Yeshua said carefully. "But we don't, and that concerns me." He pulled up a different photo, number 19 from formal night. "Can you point to where you see this person in this image?" I pointed to the figure near the edge of the frame, partially obscured by other guests but clearly visible. "Right there." Yeshua traced his finger along my sight line. "Sir, you're pointing at empty space. There's no one there." "That's impossible. I'm looking at him right now." They tried showing me the photos on multiple screens, different devices. According to them, every photo I claimed showed this man actually showed empty space or normal background passengers. But on my phone, on every screen I looked at, he was there. "Has anything else unusual happened during your cruise?" Arisbeth asked. "No, nothing. I've just been relaxing, doing the typical tourist thing." "And you never noticed this person in real time? Never saw him following you?" I thought about it. "No, I mean, I noticed people in general, but I never paid attention to any specific person. I'm traveling solo, so I'm not really looking for anyone in particular." Yeshua made some notes. "Mr. Osiris, I want to be honest with you. This isn't the first time this has happened. Very rarely, maybe once or twice a year across the entire Royal Caribbean fleet, we get a report like this. A passenger sees someone in their photos who our systems don't register. Someone who appears to be following them, watching them, but who they never notice in person. My mouth went dry. What is it? Who is it? We don't know. The company officially classifies it as a glitch, some kind of digital artifact or optical illusion that the human brain interprets as a person. But those of us who work the photo galleries, he hesitated. We have theories, such as there are some entities that exist in photos but not in physical space, or exist in physical space but only cameras can see them, or they exist, but somehow people's brains filter them out in real time, and only in photographs, when you're looking at a frozen moment, can you actually perceive them. That's insane. Yes, Yeshua agreed. It is. But I've worked for Royal Caribbean for 9 years, and I've seen this phenomenon 6 times now. Always the same pattern. Someone in the background of multiple photos, always watching the camera, always invisible to our systems but visible to the passenger. And always, he hesitated again. Always what? Always, the entity appears to be watching that specific passenger. It's never random backgrounds. It's never in photos where you're not present. It's only in photos of you. Like whatever it is, it's following you specifically. I felt sick. What happened to the other passengers who saw this? Nothing. They finished their cruises, went home. We followed up with a few of them. Some said they never saw the figure again after leaving the ship. Others. He paused. Others said it followed them home. I spent the rest of that day in my cabin, going through every photo again. Now that I was looking for him, I found him in more photos than I'd initially realized. Not just 14, 23 photos. Almost a quarter of all the images taken of me on this cruise. And they weren't random. They formed a progression. In the earliest photos, from day 1, he was far away. 50, 60 feet from me, barely visible. But with each subsequent day, he got closer. In the most recent photo, taken that morning at breakfast, he was less than 15 feet behind me, and his expression had changed. That initial curiosity had shifted to something more intense, more focused. I was terrified to have my photo taken after that, but the photographers were everywhere, and it was easier to just smile and give them my cabin number than to try to explain why I was refusing. On day 5, I went to the photo gallery again. 12 new photos had been uploaded. He was in 7 of them, and in the most recent one, taken just 2 hours. Earlier at the rock climbing wall, he was standing directly behind me, maybe 5 feet away. In the photo, I was looking up at the wall, trying to decide if I wanted to try it. He was behind me, staring at the camera with his face fully visible for the first time. He had sharp features, dark hair, no expression at all. Just that intense, unblinking stare. But here's what made my blood freeze. In the photo, I could see his hand. He was reaching forward, his fingers inches from my shoulder, like he was about to touch me. I went straight to security, showed them everything, the progression of photos, the way he was getting closer, that final image with his hand reaching toward me. The security officer, a woman named Kingsley, took it seriously. She pulled up security camera footage from the times and locations where the photos had been taken. We watched the footage together, the breakfast scene from that morning. I could see myself in the buffet line, getting eggs and bacon. In the photo, the man in the dark suit was behind me. In the security footage, there was no one behind me. Just empty space. The rock climbing wall footage was even worse. The photos showed him directly behind me, hand outstretched. The security footage showed me standing alone, looking at the wall. But then, for just a moment, maybe half a second, my body language changed. I flinched, like someone had touched my shoulder, and I turned around quickly. The footage showed me looking around confused, finding no one there, then shrugging and walking away. I remember that, I said, watching the footage. I felt something, like someone tapped me. But when I turned around, no one was there. Kingsley didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Sir, I'm going to recommend you stop allowing photos to be taken for the rest of the cruise. And I'm also going to recommend you disembark at the next port if you feel unsafe. Will that help? If he's following me, will getting off the ship make a difference? Honestly, I don't know. The next morning, we docked in Cozumel. I got off the ship and booked a flight home from Cancun that same day. I didn't even pack everything. I just grabbed my passport, my phone, and left. I forfeited the last 2 days of my cruise. I didn't care. On the flight home, I went through the photos one more time. In the most recent one, taken that morning as I was literally walking down the gangway to disembark, he was there, standing at the ship's railing, watching me leave. And for the first time, he was smiling. That was 4 months ago. I've been home in Toronto since September, trying to convince myself it was just a weird psychological thing, a product of stress and being alone and too much time staring at photos. But then 3 weeks ago, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment. A photographer was doing candid street photography for some art project. I didn't even notice him until later, when I saw the photos posted on his Instagram page. There was one photo of the coffee shop's interior, and in the background, sitting 3 tables behind where I'd been sitting, was the man in the dark suit, staring at the camera, the same man from every cruise photo. I contacted the photographer, asked him about the photo, whether he remembered seeing that man. He looked at the image on his camera and said, "What man? You mean the couple at that table?" On his camera, the table showed a young couple having coffee. On my phone screen, viewing his Instagram post, it showed the man in the dark suit. I've stopped allowing my photo to be taken. No more cameras. I've deleted all social media. I've even covered the cameras on my laptop and phone. Because I realized something. He only appears in photos. Only in that frozen moment, when light hits a sensor or film and captures an image. But that means every time someone takes a photo of me, he's there, watching, getting closer. I've researched this obsessively. There are old legends about things that cameras can see that human eyes can't. Spirits, entities, beings from other dimensions that exist at frequencies we can't perceive directly, but that photographic equipment can capture. The Victorians were obsessed with spirit photography. They thought cameras could capture ghosts. Maybe they were right. Maybe there are things that exist just adjacent to our perception, and only in photos, only in that mechanical, objective capture of light and shadow can they be seen. And maybe sometimes those things notice when they've been photographed. They notice when someone sees them, and they start paying attention back. I don't know what the man in the dark suit is. I don't know what he wants. All I know is that he's been in every photograph taken of me for the past 4 months. Every single one. My friend took a picture of us at a bar. He's in the background. My mother snapped a photo of me at her house. He's visible through the window. A security camera caught me entering my office building. He's standing behind me in the lobby. And in every photo, he's getting closer. That outstretched hand from the cruise ship photo. In the most recent photo, taken yesterday by a coworker who didn't ask permission, his hand is touching my shoulder. I can't feel it in real life. But in the photo, it's there. I don't know what happens when he gets close enough. I don't know what happens when an entity that exists only in photographs makes full contact with someone who exists in physical reality. Maybe nothing. Maybe something terrible. All I know is that I haven't let anyone take my picture in 3 days, and I'm terrified of what I'll see the next time someone does. Because the thing about photos is they capture truth. They show what's really there, even when our eyes and brains refuse to see it. And whatever is following me, whatever has been following me since I bought that unlimited photo package on the Allure of the Seas, is very, very real. Even if I'm the only one who can see it. On our final night aboard the Oasis of the Seas, half the passengers had the exact same nightmare. We were all drowning as the ship sank beneath us. When we compared notes at breakfast, we realized we'd all dreamed the same details, the same scenes, even the same final moments underwater. My name is Noah, and I'm a psychology professor from Boston. I'm 41 years old, and I've spent my career studying collective consciousness, group psychology, and the ways human minds influence each other in close proximity. So when I tell you what happened on my cruise in November 2024, understand that I'm approaching this from a scientific perspective. I'm trained to look for rational explanations, to dismiss coincidence and pattern-seeking behavior. But what I experienced defied every framework I've built my career on. The cruise was a transatlantic repositioning voyage, 11 days from Fort Lauderdale to Barcelona on Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas. It was the off-season, so the ship was only about 40% full, maybe 2,500 passengers instead of the usual 6,000. The mood throughout the voyage had been relaxed, almost eerily quiet. With so few people on such a massive ship, you could go hours without seeing another soul in some of the public areas. Everything was completely normal until the last night. We'd been at sea for 10 days, one more day until we dock in Barcelona. I went to bed around 11 p.m., exhausted from packing and preparing for disembarkation. I fell asleep quickly. The dream started the same way for all of us. Standing on the pool deck in darkness, the ship listing heavily to starboard. The tilt was so severe we could barely stand. Emergency alarms were blaring, but no crew members were visible. Just passengers, hundreds of us, stumbling across the tilted deck toward the railing, toward the lifeboats that we somehow knew wouldn't save us. In my dream, I could feel the cold night air, smell the salt water, hear the screaming. The ship was going down fast, much faster than should be physically possible. Within what felt like seconds, water was pouring over the deck. I was swept off my feet, pulled under, tumbling in the freezing darkness. I couldn't tell which way was up. My lungs burned. I opened my mouth to scream, and salt water rushed in. Then I was sinking. Not thrashing anymore, just sinking slowly through black water, watching the lights of the ship disappear above me. And in those final moments before the dream ended, I wasn't afraid. I felt acceptance, like this was meant to happen, like we'd all known it would end this way. I woke up gasping at 3:47 a.m., my heart racing, sheets soaked with sweat. I've had nightmares before, everyone has, but this was different. It felt less like a dream and more like a memory. Like I'd actually experienced drowning, felt the water in my lungs, experienced that terrible calm acceptance at the end. I couldn't go back to sleep. I got dressed and went to the 24-hour cafe on Deck 5 for coffee. When I got there at 4:15 a.m., the cafe was crowded, unusual for that hour. Maybe 30 people were sitting at tables, many of them looking shaken, pale, exhausted. I got my coffee and sat alone. The woman at the next table was crying quietly. The couple across from me were holding hands, both staring at nothing. An elderly man near the window kept checking his watch, as if confirming the time was real. Then a middle-aged man stood up and said loudly, "Did anyone else just have a nightmare about the ship sinking?" The reaction was immediate. Nearly everyone in the cafe responded, some verbally, some just nodding, all of them with the same shocked expression. We all had. We started comparing notes. The dream was identical for everyone. Same location, the pool deck, same weather, cold night, rough seas, same emergency alarm pattern, same catastrophic list to starboard, same flooding, same drowning. Some people had slightly different positions on the deck, different people near them, but the sequence of events was exactly the same. "I felt the water go into my lungs," a young woman said, her voice shaking. "I could taste it." "I saw the lights disappear as I sank," another man added. Down into the black. "And that feeling at the end," an older woman whispered. "Like acceptance. Like we all just accepted we were going to die." Everyone nodded. We'd all felt that same eerie calm at the end. More people arrived at the cafe over the next hour, all looking for coffee, all unable to sleep. When asked, nearly all of them had experienced the same nightmare. By 6 a.m., There were over 100 passengers in that cafe, all discussing the same shared dream. A crew member, a young officer named True, came to check on the unusual gathering. When we told him what was happening, his expression changed from curiosity to alarm. He made a call on his radio, speaking quietly in what sounded like Norwegian. Within 15 minutes, the staff captain arrived. Captain Ishan was in his late 50s, weathered face, calm demeanor. He listened to our accounts, asked detailed questions about the dream, took notes. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. How many of you woke up at 3:47 a.m. specifically? Nearly everyone raised their hands. And the emergency alarm in the dream, was it 7 short blasts followed by 1 long blast? We all confirmed it. That was exactly the pattern. Captain Ishan's jaw tightened. That's the abandoned ship signal. 7 short, 1 long, and 3:47 a.m. He paused. That's significant. I need to make some calls. He left. The crew member, True, stayed with us, trying to keep everyone calm, but I could see he was unsettled too. Passengers kept arriving, all reporting the same nightmare. By 7 a.m., we estimated at least 500 people, maybe a quarter of everyone on board, had experienced the identical dream. At 8 a.m., Captain Ishan returned with several senior officers. They gathered us all in the Royal Theatre and made an announcement. Passengers, what you experienced last night is unprecedented in my 30 years at sea. However, I want to assure you that this vessel is completely safe. We've conducted emergency inspections of all critical systems overnight. Hull integrity is perfect. Engines are functioning normally. Weather conditions are stable, and we have no reason to believe the ship is in any danger. Then why did hundreds of us dream about it sinking? Someone shouted. We don't know, Captain Ishan admitted, but I've been in contact with Royal Caribbean headquarters and with maritime authorities. I've also reviewed this ship's history and... He hesitated. I need to tell you something. The theater went silent. The Oasis of the Seas has a sister ship, the Allure of the Seas, identical in almost every way. In March of 2018, during a transatlantic crossing, there was a critical incident. A combination of mechanical failures and severe weather created a situation where the ship listed heavily to starboard. Emergency procedures were initiated. The ship did not sink. The crew managed to stabilize it. But for approximately 7 minutes, passengers were preparing for possible evacuation. The listing occurred at 3:47 a.m. The abandoned ship signal was activated, though evacuation ultimately wasn't necessary. My skin prickled. But that was a different ship, I said. Years ago. Yes, but the ships are identical. Same design, same structure, same everything. And he pulled out a tablet, pulled up a map. That incident occurred at these coordinates. He pointed to a spot in the Atlantic. Then he pulled up our current route. Last night, at exactly 3:47 a.m., we passed through those same coordinates. The theater erupted. People were shouting questions, expressing fear, demanding explanations. Captain Ishan raised his hands for quiet. I know this is disturbing. I don't have a full explanation. But here's what I think happened. Somehow, hundreds of you simultaneously dreamed about an event that occurred to passengers on a sister ship at the exact moment we passed through the location where it happened. Whether it's some form of psychic echo or collective unconscious or something else entirely, I cannot say. But I can promise you this ship is safe. People weren't satisfied. How could they be? We'd all experienced drowning. We'd all felt the water in our lungs, the panic, the final acceptance. It felt more real than some actual memories I have. I spent the rest of that day researching. I found articles about the 2018 incident on the Allure of the Seas. The cruise line had downplayed it, called it a minor mechanical issue. But passenger accounts told a different story. The ship had listed 15 degrees to starboard. Water had flooded some lower decks. For 7 terrifying minutes, everyone on board had thought they were going to die. But they hadn't died. The crew had stabilized the ship, pumped out the water, fixed the mechanical issues. Everyone survived. Yet somehow, 6 years later, 500 passengers on a sister ship passing through the same coordinates had dreamed their deaths in perfect detail. I interviewed as many people as I could that day. Psychology professor that I am, I couldn't help myself. I had to understand the pattern. What I found was chilling. Every person who'd had the nightmare could describe details from the Allure incident that they couldn't possibly have known. Specific cabin numbers that flooded, the exact angle of the list, the face of a crew member who'd helped evacuate people, a crew member several dreamers recognized, even though they'd never seen him before. One woman showed me a photo she'd taken of her dream journal, where she'd drawn the pattern she'd seen on the carpet of the tilted hallway. I looked up photos from the Allure of the Seas. The carpet pattern was exact. "How did you know what the carpet looked like?" I asked her. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've never been on that ship, but in the dream, I was there. I saw it. I lived it." We docked in Barcelona the next morning. As we disembarked, I noticed crew members were filming us, documenting who was leaving. True, the officer I'd spoken to earlier approached me on the gangway. "Professor Noah," he said, "the captain wanted you to know. We're reporting this incident to maritime authorities and to researchers who study anomalous events at sea. Your professional perspective would be valuable. Would you be willing to participate in follow-up studies?" "Yes," I said immediately. "But I need to know. Has anything like this happened before?" He looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Not exactly like this. But there have been other reports of passengers having shared dreams, shared experiences that shouldn't be possible. Usually it's smaller, 2 or 3 people, not hundreds. And usually it involves death that occurred on the ship itself, not sister ships. This is unprecedented." "Do you think we experience the memories of people who were on the Allure? Like somehow their fear and trauma was imprinted on that location, and we picked it up when we passed through?" "I think," True said carefully, "that the ocean is deeper and stranger than we understand. And ships carry memories. They carry the experiences of everyone who's ever sailed on them. Maybe identical ships share those memories somehow. Maybe passing through a location where something traumatic happened creates a kind of playback, an echo that sensitive minds can pick up. I've been home for 3 weeks now. I've written preliminary papers on what I'm calling the Oasis incident, though I know no mainstream journal will publish them. I've stayed in contact with dozens of other passengers who experienced the dream. We've formed a support group. Many of us are still having trouble sleeping, still feeling the sensation of drowning whenever we close our eyes. But here's what disturbs me most. 3 days ago, I received an email from a passenger who'd been on the Allure of the Seas in March 2018. She'd heard about our experience through social media. She said that during those 7 minutes, when the ship was listing, when they thought they were going to die, she'd had a strange feeling. Like she wasn't just experiencing her own fear. She was experiencing the fear of people who hadn't even been born yet. People who would one day pass through that same spot and feel what she was feeling. "It was like time collapsed," she wrote. "Like all the fear, past, present, and future, existed in the same moment. I think you didn't just dream about what happened to us. I think we experienced what was going to happen to you. We were all drowning together, across time, across ships, all of us trapped in that one terrible moment that keeps happening over and over." I don't know if she's right. I don't know if time works that way, if trauma can create loops that pull people in decades apart. All I know is that 500 people shared the exact same nightmare, on the exact same night, at the exact same time, in the exact same location where, years earlier, people on an identical ship had thought they were going to die. The ocean doesn't forget. Ships don't forget. And maybe, just maybe, when you sail through waters where terrible things have happened or could happen, or are always happening in some eternal present. Maybe you become part of that story too. I'll never take another cruise. Not because I'm afraid the ship will sink. Statistically, cruising is very safe. I'm afraid because I know now that ships carry more than passengers and cargo. They carry memories, possibilities, fears. And sometimes, in certain places, at certain times, those memories become more real than the present moment. We all drowned that night. Not literally, but in some way that matters. We experienced death, accepted it, sank into darkness. And somewhere, 6 years in the past and forever in the future, passengers on the allure of the seas are experiencing the same thing. The ocean remembers. The ships remember. And now, so do we. If you made it through all 11 of these stories, you're part of the Haunted Fears family now. These accounts remind us that the ocean holds mysteries we may never fully understand, and that cruise ships, for all their luxury and modern technology, still sail through waters that don't follow our rules. If these stories kept you up at night, or if you've had your own strange experiences at sea, drop a comment below. The Haunted Fears community wants to hear your story. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're always bringing you the most disturbing real experiences from people just like you. Share this video with someone who needs to think twice before booking their next cruise. And remember, the ocean never forgets, and neither should you. Until next time, this is Haunted Fears, reminding you to stay curious, stay safe, and always question what's really happening beneath the surface.